Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 42, Thompson versus Holland, also known as UFC Orlando. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as usual, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, we had something resembling a week off, even if I know we both watched the PFL Championships. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. Like I said, we had a week off, so it was, good rest and right back into it. We got, this week's show and next week's show. Then we have like a month off. So
I know.
I'm gonna
It'll be wild.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out something in between that gap. But yeah, man, I'm ready to get in this. I think we got a good card, 15 fights. Well, let's do it, man.
15 fights. I got a couple general questions for you about the card that I mean to ask every single time, and it usually comes up, like some of it usually comes up in the middle of these talks, but ahead of the event, what letter grade would you give this on paper?
Oh, so again, like when we score these, I score like pay-per-views against pay-per-views, fight nights against fight nights. For fight night, a little overkill with the amount of fights. Especially when you do a preview, your brain hurts after doing these previews. You guys don't realize how long we talk, but especially you talk even more than me. You have to do the intros and everything. But when you go down the card, this is a loaded fight night. So I'm gonna go with an A.
You know what? The only thing that would keep me from giving it an A and gives me maybe like an A- or a B+ is related to the other question I'm going to ask you here.
All right.
Who on this card? 30 fighters on this card. Who's closest to a title shot if they win?
Oh, that's a good question. Holland? No, I was gonna say Holland because he has a hype, but he just got murdered in his last fight. Pavlovich.
I think you're probably right. Like that's kind of that was my low key, sneaky answer there. I mean,
maybe Hermanson, like with middleweight, kind of have a new structure now.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. But honestly, you mentioned Holland. Holland might be closer to a title shot at 185 than at 170. You never know.
Yeah, he has that hype where. That's why he got booked. I mean, I know it's other circumstances too, but like when you're fighting people every single time you get any public appearances and stuff, people get excited. He has a little bit of Nate Diaz kind of thing going with him, or Dylan Dana's type thing going with him. So
sure.
He's popular that way. Let me say this: I am not as prepared as I normally am, and which I always like to try to be upfront, and that's because I spent probably one night of my tape study. Watching videos I shouldn't have been watching. So, when you search the internet for something and you kind of, you YouTube and it kind of flows into things you normally like to watch.
Sure.
Like, for example, for like half our listeners, it's probably like some porno or something.
Oh,
but it's NCAA wrestling season. So I watch a video, UFC, one of the fighters video, then it rolled right in to, I think it was Ben Askren teaching the move. I watched like 2-3 minutes of Ben Askren teaching the move, and then it rolled into David Taylor, and then it went into, I think it was Bo Nickel, of course, was out. There was a video. Then it was Carter Starachi, Henry Cejudo had a video, John Smith, Bo Jordan. I just kept watching, and I think I spent 3 hours watching wrestling instructional videos with no plans of ever using these moves. Like, honey, come here. Let me try this with you.
It's worth mentioning. You mentioned Ben Askren. For those who know him primarily from his MMA career, you have some preconceived notions. He spent a ton of time outside the UFC. Very pointedly, for some reason, Dana didn't want to sign him. He very famously chewed out a Sherdog staffer for running a story about him signing to Bellator on the front page when they were trying to push, one of the UFC events. And you may think something of his run in the UFC where he got starched by Masvidal, where he had the weird pseudo robbery fight against Lawler. But if you didn't know him from his NCAA days and his freestyle days, he was so much fun to watch. He was an awesome wrestler. Obviously super, super accomplished, but one of the best funk style wrestlers, which it's always really, really enjoyable to watch that happening just be like, wow, I can't believe some of this stuff works on top level wrestlers. It would be like if, like 20% of the pitchers in Major League Baseball were knuckleballers and it was just perfectly normal and it worked. It's like, how is this working?
It's funny because that funk style wrestling is very prevalent now compared to what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The scrambles that you see and now Ben F, not just him, but he's a huge contributor to that.
Sure. I mean, he might have been the only funk style All-American, those years when he won his titles. He was such a rarity.
And now that's just how it is now.
Yeah. Yep. And it tends to be a style of wrestling that translates well to MMA and to grappling. So, we see a disproportionate amount of them. And I can't believe we're going off on this when we got 15 fights to talk about. So shall we dive into these prelims?
That one was for my buddy Jade. He'll know why.
First fight out of the gate at UFC on ESPN 42 is a strawweight matchup between Yasmin Jauregui and Istela Nunes. Jauregui, the 23-year-old Mexican, is 9-0 overall. She is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of Combate Global. She beat Yasmin Lucindo by unanimous decision at UFC on ESPN 41. That was the Vera versus Cruz card back in August. She'll be looking to keep her record completely perfect against Nunes. The 30-year-old Brazilian is 6-3 with 1 no contest overall. She is 0-2 since joining the UFC out of 1 championship. She got tapped out by Ariane Carnelosi last October at UFC Fight Night Lad versus Dumont. Came back in April at UFC on ESPN Luque versus Muhammad and dropped a majority decision to Sam Hughes. Unsurprisingly, Jauregui is one of the bigger favorites on the card. She is minus 320, Nunes plus 250 on the comeback. Keith, I'm going to flip this to you, but I got to say that I expected more out of Istela Nunes when she came to the UFC. I was kind of excited about her. I mean, whether you thought she should have won the fight or not, she had a great fight with Mei Yamaguchi. And I figured, hey, this is a woman that might have top 15 upside. And thus far has not really shown it in going 0-2 against, frankly, kind of middle of the road at best UFC strawweights. Who do you think gets it done here? Is Yasmin Jauregui the real deal? Is she a future contender in this division? Tell me what you think about this one.
Yeah, this is a good, fun stylistic matchup to start the card, and I kind of agree with you on both those things you're saying. Like Nunes should have been a little bit better than we expected, we expected her to be better than what we're getting. And Yasmin, she's got a lot of hype. She looks really good so far. Nunes, she's pretty one-dimensional fighter though. She's a Muay Thai striker who's I think she's a 2-time world champion. That said, take that with a grain of salt, because I don't know jack shit about women's Muay Thai world. I don't know if that means anything. I know it's kind of very like boxing where everybody's a champion in something. But she's pretty athletic. She's got some good footwork. She's one of the few people that I've seen that can strike while backing up effectively. But that she does because of the Muay Thai style. She kind of backs up on the center line. Nice jab. She uses feints pretty well to set up her shots. Good kicks. She generates power because she really turns over her hips in her kicks. She likes teep kicks up the middle, which you expect from a Muay Thai striker. Beautiful switch high kick. That's probably her best. I should say it's the best strike, but it's the one that really jumps out to you because it's something you don't see as much. Gets into the clinch. She's a strong clinch fighter. Very good at framing and landing shots. Good knees inside. That's a strength of hers. But for someone who's such a decorated striker, she's been hurt a lot in the feet in MMA. She's been rocked. She's a very weak defensive wrestler. She's a weak grappler. I mean, you look at her fight against Angela Lee. She's just submitted super easily by Angela Lee, which is kind of being the norm for a lot of people. Yasmin, great athlete, really good footwork, a lot of L stepping, kind of getting off the angles on that way. High output striking, quick hands. I said it last time. I'm doubling down. The way she strikes, she really reminds me of Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Quick, down the pipe, accurate. She attacks with combos. What I like about her, she's not one of those. When I say she attacks with combos, she's not like a 2-punch, 3-punch thing. She'll drop 4, 5, 6 punches in one combination. She really has a swarming style. because of that, it leads her to be countered because it's not like a get in and get out kind of style like with someone we'll talk later on in the card. She has some power. I think she has 5 first-round finishes, which you really like. Good calf kicks, though will throw some naked calf kicks. Strong in the clinch. I haven't seen much offensive wrestling on her, and she has weak takedown defense. But to her credit, when I've seen her taken down, she does pretty good job to get back to her feet. She's hard to hold on. So like I said, this is a really fun matchup right of the box. Both are really good strikers, but I'm leaning towards Yasmin. I like her output. I like her speed. I think she overwhelms with power. I think she gets a decision. Give me Yasmin by decision.
Yeah, I got nothing to contradict there. Nunes has been hittable. She's been hit and hurt on the feet by just far less decorated strikers than herself. Like Ariane Carnelosi both hurt her on the feet and kind of ragdolled her on the ground. And we've talked about Carnelosi as somebody whose offensive wrestling is not as good as it looks like it should be just from the way she's built, but she nonetheless was able to get Nunes down and finish the fight there. If the likes of Sam Hughes and Ariane Carnelosi can hurt Nunes on the feet, I think Yasmin Jauregui absolutely can. I'm thinking she wins this one big time, and the hype train will start to crank up a little bit. We're talking about a 23-year-old from Mexico and has the underestimated power of the 0 in the L column. She's going to keep that 0. Give me Jauregui to win by 3rd round TKO. Just kind of start rolling downhill on Nunes. I think she's going to be able to hit her early and often. And yeah, like I say, this might be our last time seeing her in a curtain jerker. Next up at UFC Orlando, it is our second straight, frankly, kind of setup looking fight for an undefeated prospect against a fighter still looking for their first octagon win. Here it is Marcelo Rojo versus Francis Marshall in a men's featherweight contest. Rojo, the 34-year-old Argentinian, is 16-8 overall. He is 0-2 in the UFC since joining also out of Combate. He debuted against Charles Jourdain last March, got knocked out in the 3rd round, came back this February at UFC 271 and got tapped out in the 3rd round by Kyler Phillips. So still looking for his first UFC win. He'll try to get it here against Marshall. The 23-year-old New Jersey native is a perfect 6-0 in his mixed martial arts career. This will be his UFC debut. He won his way to the promotion with a unanimous decision victory over Connor Matthews on the Contender Series back in August. Prior to that, he had fought primarily in the South and once in ROC, but he is a pretty comfortable favorite here. He's minus 180, Rojo plus 155. Keith, did you catch Marshall's performance on the Contender Series at the time?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, he looked great. And he's getting the right test as you come in. He's going against, and we're being honest, like Rowe is a low-level UFC talent. So this is like, he's not getting thrown to the wolves, especially considering he's only, 6-0. So he's not the most experienced guy.
Yeah.
And he's young,
real quick, worth mentioning, we just talked about Yasmin Jauregui. Her record is 9-0. Worth mentioning that 3 of those wins were in a single kind of weird one-night tournament that Combate put together last fall. I mean, she's effectively like 7-0 for what difference it makes. But yeah, Marshall, he's only been pro for 3 years, man.
Yeah, but he looked really good against Connor Matthews, who's not a bad prospect himself. I'm very familiar from being that he's, from my area. Again, not like, I don't think he's a future UFC talent, champion or anything like that, but he's a decent talent. It's a decent win. And Rojo, he's 34 years old, so that's pretty old for the weight class already. He hasn't looked good in the UFC, but to his credit, you mentioned he went against Charles Jourdain and Kyler Phillips. Like that's a pretty tough skid right there. A slate against those 2 guys in your first 2 fights. I'll say he is fun. He's an action fighter. He stays very busy out there, works behind a jab. His straight right is his best punch. I like that he changes stances in the middle of striking combinations, which I love. He's got some sting on his shots. He does throw some step-in knees, which I like. Good calf kicks, but he's been hurt a lot of fights. Charles Jourdain hurt him bad to the body. Kyler Phillips beat him up a little bit. He will wrestle a little, and he has 6 submission wins, but nothing like I don't see like David Meyer out there. Marshall, he's got really good output. Like that's the thing that really jumped out to me. He's a pressure fighter who marches down his foes. Um, he likes to do the B1 pressing forward. Kind of a serviceable boxer. Doesn't do anything spectacular, but it's technically sound. Throws straight shots down the pipe. He was landing his right hand over and over against Connor Matthews. Nice snap on his shots. Good power. He has the negative, like he makes himself a pretty big target. He keeps his chin a little high, which he's gonna have to fix because he stands up pretty tall. But everything else I liked. Hard calf kicks, though he didn't check leg kicks, which I don't know why I say that. Nobody does. Good entries, and I like that he shows some really fast entries. He did shoot one time too far out of range. But when he got to the ground, he looked to advance to the ground, had a good back takes. He has a submission threat. And the best thing I think of it is, the knock on him was all quick early finishes. Like, what's his gas tank? His gas tank looked fantastic. He went hard 15 minutes, didn't slow down at all. I like Marshall in this fight. I like him a lot. I think he's a good addition to the UFC roster. I think he's better than his opponent Rowe everywhere. I see him tagging him on the feet. I see him overwhelming him with volume, maybe adding in a few takedowns. That output was really impressive to me. Give me Marshall. I'm gonna say he gets a stoppage late due to that volume. Give me Marshall by 3rd round TKO.
Yeah, I completely agree with you here. Obviously Marshall can't be looking past the opponent in front of him, and he's a Kurt Pellegrino disciple. Pellegrino spent a lot of fights in the UFC. I'm sure they're not looking past Rojo, but I'm at perfect liberty to look past Rojo, and I'm looking at him as a good addition to this division as well. He just looks and feels ready for prime time in a way that some of your Chase Hooper types have not really coming out of the Contender Series. And I know he's not like as extravagantly young as a couple of the teenagers they signed out of there, but in terms of experience, he's about as green as they come to be signed to the UFC. But he just seems to be well-rounded, good cardio, as you mentioned, which is always good to see in a high volume fighter. Yeah, I think this is going to be a good showcase for him. A very sensible test, and I'm with you. Give me Marshall by a 3rd round submission here. Next up at UFC on ESPN 42 is a lightweight matchup between two once-beaten gentlemen looking to add another win. It is Natan Levy versus Genaro Valdez. Levy, the 31-year-old Israeli, is 7-1 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of the 2020 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He debuted last November, dropping a unanimous decision to Rafa Garcia. Came back this April at UFC on ESPN Font versus Vera and took a unanimous decision over Mike Breeden. He'll look to make it 2 in a row against Valdez. The 30-year-old Mexican is 10-1 overall. He won his first 10 professional fights, including a win on the Contender Series last October, 2nd round TKO of Patrick White to win his way into the UFC. He made his debut this January at UFC 270, where he got knocked out by Matt Frevola in the first round, so he'll be looking to turn that around. He is not favored to do so. Levy is minus 180 or so on most books right now. Valdez around plus 150. Keith, between segments here, as we were just kind of bantering, you sounded less than enthused for this fight. I mean, it's a 15-fight card. If one had to go, is this it?
No. This would be the one. The one would be Michael Johnson, Marc Diakiese. Yeah, I'd get rid of that fight. It's more just like these are lower level UFC talents. That's what it is. That's it's fine stylistically. Actually, they can be a fun fight stylistically. Levy. It's funny because he's hasn't been around in the UFC as long as I thought he was. He just seems like a guy that's been around for a long time. His southpaw, very karate style. He makes his hands low, but he's pretty fast. His straight left is his best strike. I also like his check right hook when he's being pressured. Throws a lot of combinations, but he telegraphs, especially in his last fight, he telegraphs his shots a lot, like loading up a lot. He needs to just use his speed, learn to touch, just touch, and then wait for the openings, because I actually think he has a lot of good physical tools, a lot of spinning attacks, which are fun, and obviously he has moments where they're effective, but a lot of times it's just wasting energy. Um, Obviously, do that karate style. He has such a big kicking game. He loves his hook kicks. He, he throws this like pointless axe kick, which um, just never works. Uh, Teep kicks are probably his best. Uh, he's been rocked in fights, which I don't like. And despite being a karate stylist, what I do like is that he will wrestle. And he isn't a bad wrestler either. I don't like his defensive wrestling though, because he looks to stop takedowns by going for subs, guillotines, Kamaras, which I don't like, which helps him get taken down. But if he's on top, I like that he looks to advance position. He has some pretty decent back takes. He is a submission threat. And I've actually seen him tossing up some submissions off the bottom, so he can kind of get subs from top and bottom. Now, Valdez is, like I said, this would be a fun stylistic matchup. I just meant I'm not excited and like them moving forward. But Valdez, he's a pressure fighter that he wants to brawl. He throws a lot of like hard looping shots. He also loads up on everything, but he can crack a little bit. He's got some good calf kicks, but he also throws them naked. He's a bad defensive fighter, though. He gets hit a lot. He leaves himself open to counters. He tends to overreach on his power shots. He doesn't sustain his distance well at all. He will look to wrestle, but because he almost falls into his shots, like he'll overthrow and like fall into his opponent's legs, so that's when he'll just start wrestling from there. But not weak top control. I mean, he was reversed by Patrick White in their fight. He jumps into submissions that aren't there. He does have 3 submission wins, which is good, but I actually think he's a weaker grappler, and he's gassed out in the past due to his style. Like I said, I'm not high on either guy, but I'm going to go with Levy here. He's faster. I think he's the better grappler, even though Valdez does look to grapple. If he does, I think actually Levy's going to win those. Give me Levy by decision.
Yeah, I'm with you here. Valdez is going to be a lot of fun for as long as he lasts in the UFC, but on the feet as well as on the ground, he's aggressive and exciting to his own detriment. I think he's probably a better fighter than Patrick White, but that fight was closer than it needed to be just because he got into a wild brawl, and you could argue that White won the first round when, I mean, Valdez should have been able to handle him. Same thing with Matt Frevola. He got into a firefight that he was not equipped to win against Frevola.
And Frevola too, like Frevola's good there. Like Frevola's got power.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's not the fight you want to give Matt Frevola. Because he is Frevola's a limited fighter, and there are proven routes to victory against him. Standing toe-to-toe and trading haymakers in the phone booth is not it. But he lived and died by the sword in that one. And if he does that against Levy, I think it's going to be some of the same. He could fall into takedowns against Levy. You mentioned he overswings and just creates collisions that turn into scrambles, that turn into groundwork. But if he ends up on top, I think Levy will probably sweep him. He's stronger. He is a better technical grappler. And if they do just hang out on the feet, I think Levy's got faster hands and hits harder. And I don't love either of their chins, but I like Levy's better. So give me Natan Levy in this one as well. And I'm going to say this one doesn't make it to the final horn. Give me Levy by TKO in the second round. Either hurts him and it ends up on the ground, or just knocks him out on the feet. The UFC Orlando undercard now heads to the women's flyweight division, and an intriguing matchup between Tracy Cortez and Amanda Ribas. Cortez, the 28-year-old Arizona native, is 10-1 overall. She is a perfect 4-0 since joining the UFC out of the third season of Dana White's Contender Series. She beat Maria Agapova on the Contender Series to earn a berth in the UFC. Since then, she's beaten Vanessa Mello, Stephanie Egger, Justine Kish, and Melissa Gatto, all of them by decision. The most recent of those, the Gatto win, was at UFC 274 back in May. She'll look to make it 5-0 in the UFC against Ribas. The 29-year-old Brazilian is 11-3 overall. She's 5-2 in the UFC, but that that has taken place primarily in the strawweight division. She's 0-1 at flyweight. She moved up to flyweights earlier this year, took on Katlyn Chookagian, and I mean, talk about a rough welcome to a division. Unsurprisingly, lost a split decision, but decided to continue to test her fortunes in the 125-pound division. So this is her chance to bounce back, and she is the slightest of favorites. Ribas minus 120, Cortez plus 100. Keith, this is a marketable fight for the UFC.
Yeah.
Tracy Cortez is a generally exciting fighter. Subjectively, she's a very attractive woman. Like, she's the power couple with Brian Ortega. Like, stardom is there if she keeps winning. Amanda Ribas, a little bit of a different vibe. You and I are both unapologetic.
Hold on a second. Did you just call Amanda Ribas not attractive?
No. But she's more of the, like, the word you come up with instantly for Amanda Ribas is she's adorable.
She's
like, we've already talked about her cute, like, stray animal shelter that she must run in her front yard. And obviously, like, win or lose, she's just this, like, fountain of, like, just bubbly, like, effervescent enthusiasm about everything. And on top of it, again, a very, very good fighter. Her losses in the UFC, Poliana Viana that was before the UFC. Like, her losses in the UFC, Marina Rodriguez, who came within a whiff of a title shot, Katlyn Chookagian, a pound-for-pound woman.
A lot of people thought she won that fight.
Yeah, and a lot of people thought she won that. Stardom is there for either of these women, and winning this fight is kind of a turning point for both of them, honestly. Who gets it done here, and how?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. When I looked at this card, I was shocked that this one's way down on the card. As you mentioned, two very attractive women, two with really good records, aren't that far from title shots. I really don't think they've marketed Tracy Cortez correctly. I mean, she's been inactive at times, so she kind of loses her own momentum herself. But, like, I'm sorry, Michael Johnson shouldn't be higher on a card at this point in their careers than Amanda Ribas and Tracy Cortez, and even like the fight that is going to be fun, like a Niko Price, like, he doesn't deserve to be higher on the card than these guys do. This fight should be on the main card, but. In fairness, the main card is absolutely loaded for a fight night. So, man, I'm glad that the lines were really close because Ribas has faced the better competition. So I was worried that she might be like a big favorite, like negative 180 to negative 200. I'm glad this is a close line because I think both girls are really talented. And Ribas is one I've been on for a while, and Cortez is one I've like warmed up to her a little bit. Like I thought she was really good, like good addition. Then like the hype went really high, and I'm like, take it back a little bit. And then I kind of went the other direction. Now I'm kind of like coming back around on her. Ribas, she's very athletic. She's elusive. She moves really well. Really good athlete. Great footwork. Very like fluid. I like her output. Very good at like fighting from a distance, quick hands, accurate. She's really good at mixing in punches and kicks together, which I love. She'll toss out some spinning attacks and stuff too, which is fun. Get in the clinch. She's got a judo background. I hate that she goes for the head and arm throw. I hate it, but it's like a specialty for her, so it works for her, so good. But if she can do some other throws, she can get some inside body lock takedowns. Good on the ground. Good top control. She looks to pass on the ground. I keep mentioning it, even though it's starting to get there. Further down the Sherdog Fight Finder list of a record, but she outgrappled Mackenzie Dern for large portions in their fight, which is extremely impressive. She has 4 submission wins. She's a really good, well-rounded fighter. Now, Tracy Cortez was kind of a ground fighter whose striking was like way behind her ground fighting. Now it's kind of caught up a little bit. She's a pressure striker, some good volume. She moves well, good footwork, good jab. I like that she follows the jab to get into the pocket where she's unloading power shots. I like that she has good variety in her attacks, doesn't really always tackle the same combinations. Good kicking game. She will throw some naked kicks, which I don't like. She has some defensive flaws. She lacks head movement, but she keeps moving forward even when she gets tagged. She's a physically strong woman. She does really well when she gets in the clinch, likes the dirty box. She's a good wrestler, good entries, good at winning scrambles, strong top game. She is a submission threat. She likes like a lot of the uh, head attacks, guillotine. She had like a barbell choke. So things to watch for. And I liked it against Melissa Gatto, who's a good grappler. She showed some strong submission defense, was able to get avoid any submission attempts from her. She is a weak defensive wrestler, though, and if you put her on her back, she struggles a little bit. She definitely wants to be on the top side. That's a little bit of an area she needs to grow. I think this is a fantastic matchup. I think we got a war. I am leaning towards Ribas. I think she's more well-rounded. Even though I just was kind of like pumping up Cortez striking a little bit, I still think her striking is a little behind Ribas's. And Ribas is going to really have to stop takedowns from Cortez. And I doubt that she stops all of them. Like, I think Cortez might get like one or two, but I think we'll have a back and forth fight. I think Ribas showed me enough against Mackenzie Dern that she's going to be really hard to submit. I think on the feet, she's going to win the striking battle. I think when they get to the clinch, she might even land some takedowns herself, maybe put Cortez on her back. I think both women will have their moments, but I think Ribas is a little faster on the feet. I think she hits harder. Give me Ribas by decision.
I love a lot of the things you mentioned there. One of them that it is impressive how much Cortez has become a more well-rounded fighter since her days in like Invicta and Combate, because you've been very open about the fact that you think she should have lost the split decision that she won over Erin Blanchfield.
Yeah,
goodness,
but that's no knock on her.
Yeah, it's no knock on her, but what I was going to say
that wouldn't be a bad loss. Erin Blanchfield was fantastic,
and she is a much better fighter than she was 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the woman that had that, and so was Blanchfield. I'm not saying that a rematch between the two would go one way or the other, but like she is definitely a better and more complete fighter than she was at that time. She's a better and more complete fighter than the woman who beat Maria Agapova like 3 years ago to get to the UFC, and for her to do that in the midst of, frankly, a pretty light fight schedule and some layoffs here and there, that is impressive. I like that you mentioned that she is a big, powerful athlete. I mean, she fought Stephanie Egger at 135, and Stephanie Egger is not only a judoka herself, but she's a big, strong woman. Like, she's a woman that looks like she could probably fight well at 145. And not only did Cortez fight off some takedowns, get back to her feet, she took Egger down late in that fight. That gives me some hope for her against Ribas, who she's a good striker, but judo is her core and kind of her fallback. I don't know if it'll be enough. I think Ribas is going to stay at 125. Even though she lost to Caitlin Chukagian, I think as a test run, it showed her that, okay, yeah, I came up short against one of the best fighters in the world, but I wasn't dwarfed. The problem wasn't that I wasn't big enough to fight with Caitlin Chukagian. I just, she fought her fight and she beat me. This is an important fight for the division. Again, an important fight for both of these fighters, but give me Ribas to win a decision here as well in probably a really fun fight. We head now back to the men's featherweight division for a matchup between Darren Elkins and Jonathan Pearce. Elkins, the 38-year-old Indiana native, is 27-10 overall. He is 17-9 in the UFC, and despite some serious ups and downs over his very storied career, he has won 3 of his last 4. He won his last time out, a unanimous decision over Tristan Connolly. That allowed him to wash out the bad taste of a quick first-round knockout to add to the highlight reel of Cub Swanson last December. Prior to that, he had won over Luis Garagori and Derek Minner, both of those fights by TKO and submission stoppage, respectively. He's going to try to keep the good vibes going against Pearce. The 30-year-old Tennessee native is 13-4 overall. He is 4-1 since joining the UFC out of the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series. Won his way into the UFC back in 2019, debuted, and was the most recent and perhaps the last victim of that mythical and deadly creature known as first-round Joe Lozon. Since that minute-and-a-half-long knockout, he has come back with 4 straight wins over Kai Kamaka, Omar Morales, Christian Rodriguez, and most recently, Makwan Amirkhani, whom he knocked out late in the second round at UFC Fight Night Blades versus Aspinall in July. So he'll look to make it 5 straight here. He is heavily favored to do so, one of the biggest favorites on the card, if not the biggest. He's minus 450 right now on most of your sports books. Elkins plus 360 as the underdog. Keith, Darren Elkins has made a career, a lengthy and respectable UFC career, coming up on 30 fights in the octagon, out of coming in as an underdog, getting whooped on, and finding a way to win late. We have dubbed him with the F-word middle name for some of his exploits.
Yeah.
This would be some heavy lifting, even by the standards of Darren fucking Elkins. Does he get it done here against Jonathan Pearce?
Yeah, he's a big underdog, but I mean, if he wins, I won't be surprised because that's what he does. Darren fucking Elkins. He's 38 years old, but he's like 100 in fight years. And to his credit, like you mentioned 30 fights in the UFC, like that those guys who do that, they don't get enough credit, you know, because you think of a guy like someone who's extremely accomplished, and like how many fights does John Jones have in the UFC? 20? Does he even have? I don't think he even has that many. Does he? Probably not a good example, being that
but he's had some long layoffs. But think of what he had accomplished within his first 8 fights in the UFC.
Yeah, and then and I'm not trying to compare these two, but just the longevity and
And we've got Clay Guida and Rafael dos Anjos to talk about further up this card. Two guys with more than 30 fights in the UFC.
Yeah, it's truly impressive when you really put it in context. You're fighting at least 30 fights in your career are in the upper echelon of the world, fighting the baddest dudes on the planet. The worst guy in the UFC is still better than 95% of the people out there on the regional scenes. And then when you compare that to the world, obviously it's like 99.9% of people in the world, they're still tougher than. And to fight 30 times, it's truly impressive, and that's why he's Darren fucking Elkins. And then what's even more impressive is when you think of a guy like what Darren Elkins is. He's a weak athlete. Like we make jokes about, doing track things and stuff. He needs fighting because he's super tough. He's got legendary toughness. His cardio is his greatest tool. He just keeps coming. Well, his cardio and his mindset too. Like they kind of go both hand in hand. He keeps coming. He's slow. He lacks power because he doesn't have great technique. He throws arm punches. He does kick hard. I'll say that. But his nickname is the Damage, and he has taken, God knows, like ungodly amount of damage. Like he's like a real life Jason. Like gets stabbed, gets punched, thrown down the stairs, just keeps coming. Like, why won't you die, Darren Elkins? Like, I'll be back next fight. Even when he gets like smoked by Cub Swanson, and looks like really made me worried. Like, okay, Darren Elkins finally done. He wins his next fight. He is a wrestler, and he's a good wrestler. He's not this like. He's not Jordan Barros. He's not blasting his dirty hips. It's just that mindset. That's what we talk about. He will just keep going for that takedown. Punch him, knee him, keep kicking him, kick him with the balls. Don't matter. He's going to keep coming. When he gets in that clinch, he stays glued to his opponent. He gets a takedown. He's got good ground and pound. He's got stoppages, wins. I think it was like 3 fight. No, he lost his. No, he won his last one by unanimous decision. But before that, he stopped Derek Minner with ground and pound.
Stopped Luis
Eduardo
Garagorri.
Yeah.
But
Michael
before
Johnson.
that, he choked out Michael Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as we ignore those 4 losses in a row. But yeah, I just love talking about Darren Elkins. And then, of course, his cardio, as we said, is a weapon. Jonathan Pearce, he fights a lot like Darren Elkins. He constantly moving forward. He's long and lengthy guy. He works behind a jab, long straight strikes down the pipe. I like that he will throw it flying knee in, but that's more just to kind of pressure his opponent's back. A lot of people will avoid a flying knee, but backing straight up. And he used that to close the distance, get him out of the cage. Good kicking game. A lot of kicks to the body. And he doesn't mind if you grab his leg because he wants to scramble anyways. He's a guy that he uses his striking to distract you from his chance to close the distance to get to the clinch. He gets in the clinch. He uses his size really well. He can grind in there. He will look for takedowns in there. He hit Mako and Americani with a nice like rolling Kimura that you don't see often. Like when Americani was going for a takedown, I think like Kara Parisian used to do stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It was nice to see like a blast from the past kind of move that you don't really expect anymore. He isn't an explosive wrestler, but he has that Darren Elkins determination and mindset where he's going to find a way to get to the fight to the ground. He's good at winning scrambles. He's good at landing strikes in those scrambles. Like his last fight against Americani, he was landing nice elbows in scrambles, strong top game. He knows like he's going to pin you first and then wear you down before he looks to work more. Good ground and pound. When he's taken down, the one mistake, and you can't do this against Darren Elkins, he's given up his back to get back up. It's been a while ago, so maybe something I need to take out of my notes soon. But he also has strong cardio, and he's got strong grappling cardio, which is the key because he's going to – you can see guys who have great output, but then also you start seeing them grapple, and it slows down. No, not Jonathan Pearce. He can grapple for 15 minutes hard. I hate picking against Darren Elkins because it's Darren Elkins, and then he wins, and I'm going to say, wow, why would I not pick Darren Elkins? That's what he does. But I just think this is a terrible stylistic matchup for him. Pearce is bigger, he's younger, doesn't have the wear and tear from the damage he's taken. I think he can match Elkins' cardio, which very few people we can say that about. It comes down to if Pearce is a better wrestler. And at this point in their career, I think he might be the better wrestler, which I don't say that about for a lot of guys against Darren Elkins. He's more durable. Give me Pearce. I think he dominates Darren Elkins. He might get a stoppage, but I don't want to pick that against Elkins, so I'll say Pearce by decision.
I love everything you put down there, but the most important thing to me, the thing that the fight kind of pivots on, is that you mentioned that Pearce has good grappling cardio. Because Darren Elkins, we think of him as the guy that gets beat up and then turns things on late, but he's not Paul Craig. He doesn't just get his ass kicked and then lures a guy into a triangle. He like loses the first 2 rounds, but then all of a sudden the other guy's tired and Elkins all of a sudden can take him down, beats him up a little, takes his back and chokes him out.
Derek Minner is a sorry to interrupt you. Derek Minner is a good watch that fight where he's losing the grappling to suddenly he's winning all the grappling.
Yeah, and that's something that's hard for me to picture him doing to Jonathan Pearce. For all the reasons you mentioned, Pearce himself is a pretty good wrestler, a very good grappler, has good cardio in grappling heavy fights, is going to be bigger, fresher, a lot more tread left on the tires. Yeah, it pains me to say it because Elkins, it's impossible not to root for the guy. You know, he did not have any appearance of somebody that would be in his 28th UFC fight at age 38 and still kind of going strong and having won 3 of his last 4. It's not something I would have pictured, but I think we are kind of coming up on the end here. And like you, I think Pearce probably wins a pretty straightforward fight where Elkins just doesn't have that place he can go in the 3rd round because Pearce is just as fresh as he is and still bigger and still fundamentally sound. So give me Pearce to win a pretty lopsided decision here. It won't be fun, but, you know, good on Pearce to have bounced back from a frankly embarrassing UFC debut and just like rocketing right up into the borders of the rankings here. Next up, the lightweights take the cage as it is Michael Johnson versus Marc Diakiese. Johnson, the 36-year-old St. Louis native, is 20-18 overall. He is 12-14 since joining the UFC out of the 12th season of The Ultimate Fighter. Worth noting that he is 2-2 at featherweight. He's 10-12 as a lightweight, which is the division he's fighting in here. He most recently fought back in July at UFC Fight Night Dos Anjos versus Fiziev, where he dropped a split decision to Jamie Malarkey. Prior to that, he had knocked out Alan Patrick in the 3rd round, probably saving his job because he came into that fight on a 4-fight losing streak. Nonetheless, he has lost 5 of 6 coming into this fight. Certainly his back is probably going to be against the wall from here on out for the foreseeable future. He needs to get it done against Diakiese, a fighter who unbelievably is still just 29. It feels to me like he should be 36 as well, but there you go. He's still just 29. 29-year-old Brit is 16-5 overall. He is 7-5 in the UFC. It's been a streaky run for him, just alternating 2 and 3 fight winning and losing streaks, but he is on a 2-fight winning streak. He has beaten Vyacheslav Borshov and Damir Hadjovic in back-to-back fights this year, those in March and July. The second UFC London card was the most recent one. Here he gets a matchup against a fighter with a much easier to pronounce name and pretty lopsided odds as well. Diakiese minus 275, Johnson plus 230. Keith, I want you to forget the history lesson about Michael Johnson, because I go off on the rant all the time that it's bizarre that a fighter who's below 500 in the UFC and has never been much above 500 in the UFC, it's not like he's fallen off, has beat prime Tony Ferguson, prime Edson Barboza, knocked out Dustin Poirier. It's weird to think that. Forget the history lesson. Give me the current scouting report based on just his fights in the last 2-3 years. Who is Michael Johnson, and does he have any chance of winning here?
Why do you have to ask me a question like that?
to make it interesting, because if I just say Diakiese wins a shitty decision and we move on in 15 seconds, nobody's going to listen to us anymore.
No, that's it. Really? That's what see, people always tune in for the Michael Johnson breakdowns and Marc Diakiese. Is there like a strong fan base? Is there is like Michael Johnson like a little bit of that like old Vitor kind of thing where people are just like, oh, I don't know. Is someone in the Shirt Dog forums really pumping up the return of Michael Johnson?
I mean, one day people are going to look back at his record in the Fight Finder and be like, "Who was this guy?"
Yeah,
when they,
I know, because he's got some killer wins. I mean, he blasted Dustin Poirier. That Dustin Poirier, that was he'll never be a top guy. Like he's got close, but he'll never be a top guy. He got blasted by Michael Johnson. Yep. Talk about 180s, both of them. Michael Johnson, so he still has, and this is what drives me crazy about him, because I don't know what he's missing. Because when you watch him, he still has skills. Like his hands are still fast. He's a southpaw with long, always like crazy long arms. He has that like quick 1-2s, basic strikes down the pipe. He can work the body. But one thing you said, Dustin Poirier and all these guys, legendary guys he's beaten, despite knocking out Alan Patrick, that power is grossly overrated. It isn't there anymore. His wrestling, on the other hand, is underrated. I just wish he would use it. He refuses to wrestle. He has really good takedown defense, except when he goes against Khabib Nurmagomedov, but like Khabib Nurmagomedov would probably take down freaking Kyle Dake. He's that's incredible. He has 9 submission losses, so while he's a good grappler, he can be subbed. I guess, is that the scouting report? I didn't say much nice things about him. I don't know.
He's lost 5 of his last 6 fights. There may not be much nice to say. I guess that's why I said, like, what's the scouting report on the guy that we see right now that's lost 5 out of 6? I mean, and I think you mentioned it, like right there. He is still a fast, accurate striker who has okay power, but not like one-shot kill power anymore.
Yeah, but he's a guy. He's taken a lot of damage over the years, but he's not like completely shot where he can't take a punch anymore. Like that, you see that. Like, for example, it was a huge shot against Moraes, the Shane Moraes, but it was still like, does that punch land if Marlon Moraes wasn't really shot, if his durability wasn't gone? Frank Yeager is getting one shot and he's gone. Like, that's not happening to. Yeah, Josh Emmett caught him with that like huge shot in the 3rd round in the fight.
But that was at featherweight where like he was bad anyway.
Yeah. He's just one of these guys, like everything goes right until he goes wrong, like Thiago Moises. He does enough to be competitive against Clay Guida, just not enough to get over the hump. Does enough to be competitive against Jamie Walker, who has pretty good power himself and is a long, lengthy guy, but just doesn't do enough to get over the hump. I don't know. Is he a guy like he kind of fights down to his competition a little bit? I don't know. I'm moving on from him. I don't know why I spend this time talking about Michael Johnson. The one fight I'm like, hey, this is the worst fight in the card, and I'm spending the most time thinking about it. Diakiese, he's athletic. He likes to fight at both stances, though he can be gun shy a lot on the feet. He's got quick hands. His straight right, especially from the orthodox stance, is his best strike. I like that he targets the body. I think similar to what I just said about Michael Johnson, I think his power is historically grossly overrated. They make it sound like he's just like big power puncher, and he's not. I think he looks like he does. I mean, he's an absolute shredded black guy with a painted red mohawk.
Yeah,
like
he looks like he made a badass fighter in a UFC video game.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, you have the mohawk, like the difference. Like, oh yeah, but paint it red and have it match your shorts and like, you know. But he's not a power hitter. He really isn't. He's more like especially because he doesn't let his hands go enough. His calf kicks are really good. That's the best part of his game. I like when he gets in the pocket and he throws some step-in knees. I like when he gets in the pocket and he throws some elbows. Like, he has a mean streak if he lets it go, but he really fights to win a decision now. Like, he's not going to put himself in danger. We saw that in his last fight. We talk about English fighters not being wrestlers, like, that narrative's gone. But like, for a long time, that was the stereotype. English fighters can't wrestle, and to a sense, that still is true. But the highest guys, the guy who succeed, the guys we see fight in the UFC, they had to do something about their wrestling, and that's why Leon Edwards, and almost like the pendulum's like goes the other direction, where those guys wrestle a lot because they've worked on it so much. And Diakiese is a really good wrestler. You look at his fight against Damir Hadzovic, he won strictly based off of wrestling. That said, that fight was extreme. That's just one of the most boring fights you'll ever see. It
was horrible.
And I'm a guy who was just talking about watching like 3 hours of guys doing instruction of wrestling, not even wrestling, like teaching wrestling. And I'm not planning on wrestling anybody anytime soon, or probably ever again in my life. So I'm not anti-wrestling. I'm the wrestling guy for sure, dog. Like, I'm the guy who's, me and Mike were talking, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but fuck it, I'm already halfway through. Like, about Sherdog doing more NCAA wrestling coverage and stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I was tweeting the other day during the All-Star Classic for Sherdog and stuff. So I'm not anti-wrestling. Anybody who's ever watched this knows I'm not anti-wrestling. I think his takedowns. His threat of takedowns will open up his striking once he lets it go. But until he lets his hands go, there's a ceiling to him. And he's getting up there in age, and I think we've kind of know what he is at this point. Like, I don't think he's going to make this big jump that we've been waiting for him. His top game has to improve, though, too. Like, he's being that he's not a natural wrestler, he gets takedowns, but he doesn't have that, like, controlling top game. He is hard to take down. He's got good takedown stuff. And if he is taken down, he does well to get back up to his feet. But he's been submitted a couple of times. I think Rafael Alves caught him. I think Dan Hooker caught him. So he's been subbed. So that's obviously a error in his game. I think this is a tough stylistic matchup because, like I said, when you look at Michael Johnson, nothing like screams at you like faded fighter. That said, I am going to take Diakiese. If anybody gets a takedown, it'll be him. He lands the harder calf kicks, and I'm not picking Michael Johnson at this point in his career over many guys. So even though I think it's a little tougher styles matchup than many people think, I still like Diakiese to win by decision.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with the breakdown there. If there's one thing I'm sure of, this is my anti-fight of the night pick. This has terrible fight written all over it, simply because I think Diakiese is going to have a hard time getting Johnson down. If he wants to. Johnson is perfectly willing to wait for the other guy to go first. So is Diakiese. And one thing that will get Johnson to open up and throw his hands a little bit is kicking his legs. Like, he tends to counter rather than check. So if Diakiese gives him a couple low kicks in the first round and Johnson like hits him back hard, I think that'll even shut off that avenue. I think this could turn into a bit of a staring contest. I do favor Diakiese to win it just because he'll be the guy coming forward. He'll be the guy probably at least attempting takedowns, and just Johnson probably won't put his stamp on this fight. like I don't like Diakiese at minus 275 against anybody, but if
No.
there's anybody that like just Johnson has literally sat back and let himself lose close fights that he could have won just by throwing a little more volume.
Yep.
Yeah, like and Jamie Malarkey just multiple times recently, and beating Malarkey would have been a hell of a turnaround for him.
Huge win.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, Malarkey's very good, and if Malarkey is in the top 15 a year from now, and we're looking back like, man, Johnson could have thrown 5 more strikes in one of those rounds and maybe taken a split decision instead of losing one.
Yeah.
It would be just the most Michael Johnson thing ever.
You know what Michael Johnson might do? Be like, oh, Diakiese's trying to take me down. He can't take me down. Let me pull guard.
Yeah.
It's the third round. It's 1 round each, and it's like 1 minute left, and it's a really close fight. Let me try like a spinning back fist, and I trip, fall to the ground. Diakiese's on top of me.
Certainly, you can never discard the possibility of the wheels completely falling off like that. I mean, Johnson has made blunders. It's how he lost the Thiago Moises fight, where he was winning handily, and then just got subbed in a heartbeat early in the second round. But give me Diakiese by decision here, and it'll be a fight that we probably never want to talk about again. We stay in the lightweight division. We stay with the grizzled veterans, and it is Clay Guida versus Scott Holtzman. Guida, the 40-year-old Chicago native, 37-22 overall, 17-16 in the UFC. He's just behind that pack of Miller and Cerrone for the most appearances in UFC history, just a couple fights behind. But he has alternated wins and losses for his last 5 fights. Got tapped out by Claudio Puelles in the first round back in April at UFC Fight Night Lemos versus Andrade. Prior to that, he himself choked out Leonardo Santos at UFC on ESPN Font versus Aldo last December. He'll try to keep the alternating wins and losses going by getting back into the win column against Holtzman. The 39-year-old Tennessee native is 14-5 overall. He is 7-5 in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight losing streak, though in his defense, those have been against Beneil Dariush and Mateusz Gamrot. Nobody is sure how Scott Holtzman fell upward into fighting top 10 fighters, but here at least he is regressing to the mean after a couple of frankly nasty knockout losses. He gets a little bit more of an appropriate test, and he's actually favored for the first time in a while. Holtzman is minus 150, Guida plus 130. Well, Keith, we got 2 guys that are about 10 months apart in age, and one of them has 19 career fights and the other one has 300. Who gets it done here, Guida or Holtzman?
Yeah, I think if I see Clay Guida fight and his brother slapping him in the face, and it's just like, really? That's what he needs more? He needs more damage to his head? Like, that's what I go with?
Like Jason Guida has been trying out for Dana White's Power Slap League for like the past 15 years now. He's like, this is what I was born to do.
That's it.
Like, that, we'll forget all about him like showing up like overweight on Tough and just figuring he'd get a pass because he was Clay Guida's brother. And that should be the first, like the main event of the Power Slap should be the Guida brothers. Like finally Clay gets to slap him back. Yeah. And you can't even block or move your head or anything.
Yeah, Clay showed it. He's got a chin, so maybe he just can whale one back. I don't know how to want to get slapped by Clay Guida. Like he's crazy.
He's a carpenter. His hands are going to be all calloused and shit.
Yeah,
that's going to hurt like hell.
Yeah, like he's like how many times has he smashed with his hands, like destruction, or you get that like nail that you can't get, you just hit it with your hand. Clay Guida. Like, what the fuck you want me to say about this guy? Like, why is he like? I can't believe he's still fighting. And he's still, the thing about him is, like either he'll never fight for a title or anything like that. I almost said again, he never did, but like at one time he was like a top 10 guy, but he's still somewhat effective. That's the thing about this guy, which is incredible, being 40 years old in this division and the greatest. Yeah, a lot of people think the greatest division in the UFC, at least for 10 years now. So tons of movement, really herky-jerky style. He still has good overall output. That said, like his output used to win him fights in the past. He doesn't have that type of output anymore, but he still has good for anybody. He's gotten really right-hand happy over the years. A lot of like power shots on the feet, trying to land big power shots. Though he really was never a power puncher to begin with. He can wrestle. He's got some good entries. Still to this day, he took down Michael Johnson 3 times. He took down Bobby Green twice. 2 guys who come from, even though you don't think of either guys as collegiate wrestlers, they both have wrestling backgrounds. You know, even though they're both known for their striking. He's really good at getting like that snatch single, which is so weird that he gets it. Like, I always feel like I can see it coming a mile away, but those guys aren't doing their John Smith 3 hours video study, I guess. He's got really like this old man strength. He grabs a leg, just pick you up, slam you. But he's been submitted a lot, at least recently. Charles Oliveira subbed him. I mean, he's Charles Oliveira subs everybody, but Jim Miller, Claudio Pilas subbed him quick. They all caught him. He almost got subbed by Bobby Green in their fight. Almost got guillotined, so that's not a good sign. Cardio's still good, but it's probably because his output has dropped a lot, so he can still go hard 15. Holtzman, he's older than I thought, and he's been out for a little while. He's 39 years old, so he who knows, he could come back and be completely fallen off. But I think the reason why I think he's younger, again, you talked about how many fights he has, but also the guy's freaking jacked. Like, he comes in and like I'm not going to the beach with Scott Holtzman. Like, me and Scott Holtzman walking on the beach together, like, ain't nobody looking at me, you know. Or, hey, maybe I'm getting like this. Hey, get 2 hot chicks. Maybe I'm getting like the lesser of the hot ones. So maybe Scott Holtzman. Maybe we'll hang out on the beach.
Go pick up Scott Holtzman's leftovers. Like,
yeah. I'm not going to the beach. Like, I'm like you know, like you go with friends. Yeah. Like I'm hanging out with my wife. I'm going to the beach. Scott Holtzman's not my +1.
No.
My wife's just saying, "Hey, can you want to go get a drink?" You know. He's a good athlete. He's a pocket boxer who he loves to work the body. I like that. He cuts angles really well. He's good at changing his feet mid combination. He will focus a little too much on his power shots. He kind of loads up on everything, especially his last fight. He was trying to land one big shot, and was it Gamera his last fight, right?
Yeah, Gamera was the last one.
Yeah. He was trying to knock Gamera out with one shot. He likes to throw a lot of lead uppercuts, which you know I hate. But to his credit, he hits hard. He is hittable, though, because he stands up a little too tall. He almost never wrestles. Though I will say his grappling has improved over the years. Even like the little exchanges he had in his last fight with like a really good grappling Gamera. But he still isn't a great defensive wrestler. And then you have to stop worrying about his chin. One, because of his age, but he was knocked out on his last fight. It's good that he took some time off, but when you're 39 years old, you don't want to take too much time. Yeah. In their primes, I would have put Guida all day. I would have thought this was a terrible stylistic matchup. A big power puncher who's going to just get loaded up on shots, and Guida's going to duck under him and get to his legs and take him down. I think he would have tucked Holtzman into a takedown dummy. Now, I think Holtzman lands enough on the feet. I just don't trust Guida's chin anymore. And I think Holtzman's going to starch him. I think he's going to land one big shot. Give me Holtzman by first round TKO.
I can totally see that happening here. Holtzman's going to be bigger. While he's not that much younger, as I pointed out, he's not even a full year younger. The difference in the amount of tread on the tires is ludicrous. The thing that gives me pause is that Holtzman has had those lengthy layoffs recently. I mean, the guy's basically fought not even once per year for the last couple of years. And when you're missing a year and a half, like 18-month layoff at age 39, it does make me wonder, because it's the opposite of what you'll often say about when a 22-year-old is out for a year or most of a year, where they might make great strides. I always worry they're just going to be really diminished when they come back and not even the same as they were. Whereas Guida, he's about as much of a known quantity as there is in the UFC right now. I mean, have your notes changed on him much? I mean, like, they've changed very slightly where it's like, yeah, he still has this, but not quite as much. He still has this, but not quite as much. I mean, I always thought that a lot of the things about him, even in his prime, were a little overstated. Like, I didn't think he was that exciting. I just thought he was unorthodox and surprisingly effective.
Yeah, if his personality wasn't what it was, and he cut his hair, like if he had like a fade,
yeah, he wouldn't still be in the UFC.
Yeah,
You
good
know, he would
point.
have been cut like the first time he lost a couple in a row. But you know,
He'd
he
be
had
going to
like
the beach getting his wife stolen by Scott Holtzman.
exactly, yeah.
Is he a Holtzman? Is that what he's been doing for the last year? Like just going to the beach and stealing wives?
In that case, I support, you know, I support this
Yeah, good
career
for
choice.
him.
Yeah,
I ain't
yeah,
hate him.
good for you, man.
Yeah.
Give me Guida here. Like I can see Holtzman just catching him with something big and plunking him. Guida has always had a fantastic chin, and with all the bouncy, deceptive movement, used to be really hard to hit cleanly. That's kind of gone away. So I could see Holtzman completely just crushing him with something, but give me Guida to just kind of mix it up with the threat of those takedowns, bounce around. I almost liked it better back in his prime when he'd throw a lot of volume and not a whole lot of power on it. Because as you mentioned, he does kind of try to wind up now and throw kill shots, and that has left him more vulnerable in turn. I'm just betting that Holtzman is not able to take advantage of it. So I'm giving a really nervous pick here of Guida by decision as the slight underdog. Next up at UFC on ESPN 42 is a strawweight matchup between Angela Hill and Emily Ducote. Hill, the 37-year-old Maryland native by way of Southern California, is 14-12 overall. She is 9-12 since joining the UFC, first as a graduate of the 20th season of The Ultimate Fighter, then after her release from the UFC, returning as an outgoing Invictus strawweight champ. She won her last time out. It was a unanimous decision over Lupi Godinez. That allowed her to snap a 3-fight losing streak against Tisha Torres, Amanda Lemos, and Verna Jandiroba. She'll look to make it 2 wins in a row against the resurgent Ducote. The 28-year-old Oklahoma native is 12-6 overall. She is 1-0 in the UFC. Joined the UFC out of Invicta, debuted back in July at UFC on ABC, Ortega versus Rodriguez against Jessica Penne, taking a unanimous decision over her. She is a slight favorite here. Ducote minus 130, Hill plus 110. It feels as though we've said this about maybe 5 fights in a row on this card, but one of the fighters in this fight is very much a known quantity, and the other one is a little bit more of a question mark. I mean, Angela Hill is what she is. She is a sub 500 fighter in the UFC, due in part to being a little bit of a scream at the TV fighter, and due in part to absolutely brutal matchmaking, where just every time she wins 2 fights in a row, they give her a top 5 fighter. You know, it's just
she's her own worst enemy though too.
Yeah, no, she is. Like, she's a scream at the TV fighter. Like, there
like
are
somehow well, I mean, no, none of that. Like her willingness to take like short notice fights and stuff. Like somehow, when she heard that Yuri Prochazka was like abandoning the belt, she was trying to get a fight with Glover Teixeira. Like,
yeah,
you need someone to jump in. I can
probably was. I mean, well, I think she like envisions herself as the female Neil Magny, but comes out more like the female Michael Johnson. You know, and I feel bad saying that because I think Angela Hill is great.
Yeah,
but
if Michael Johnson had a personality like the Angela Hill.
Yeah, but she is somebody like Johnson whose back is going to be more or less against the wall every fight from here on out. And at 30, I mean, it's already kind of remarkable that she's plying her trade at 37 in the strawweight division. This is not a division that is typically kind to the elderly, but I mean, she is what she is. You know, she is a Muay Thai striker, still has fast kicks and punches. I think she fights her best when her opponent is coming at her, when she can determine when to initiate the clinch rather than having it imposed on her. Like, if you're just coming at Angela Hill, she is still capable of carving somebody up. You know, she absolutely like slaughtered Ariane Carnelosi that way. And if she's the one who can kind of determine when the clinch happens, I mean, she even held her own there against Loma Lookboonmee, who is a former Muay Thai champion. Outside of that, whatever her opponent wants to make work can kind of be made to work on her at this point. Like, her takedown defense has never been great, and she can get outstruck by less decorated strikers who are just bigger, faster, younger, more aggressive. That spells bad news against Ducote because she's been a revelation since dropping to 115. She is a shining example of a fighter actually revitalizing their career by dropping in weight, because she not only was she just another flyweight in Bellator, she was just another flyweight who actually kind of bounced out on a losing streak where she didn't look that inspiring in any of her fights. And since dropping to 115, she's turned from a pretty good grappler who was turning into a serviceable striker to a good striker with surprising power and diversity in her strikes, who is also capable of grappling. Like, I never thought in 2022 I'd be saying, man, I'm really excited to have Emily Ducote in the UFC strawweight division. But here I am saying it. And I think this one is kind of tailor-made for Ducote to look good. Like, Ducote's not going to do the one thing that still spells likely defeat against Angela Hill, which is just, coming straight at her with poor head movements and poor and poor footwork. Like, Ducote is, she's not a huge strawweight, but she is going to be taller, and I think arm-wise at least probably going to have a little better reach than Hill. Like, Hill is pretty good at using her length with kicks, but Ducote's she's gonna hit harder. She's gonna have the option to maybe try and take this to the ground. She's always had pretty good serviceable, takedowns with just kind of like judo style trips and throws. Has a good top game with like some mean intention ground and pound. That was one of the things she always kind of had, even at flyweight when she was just an okay fighter. Yeah, this is going to be a rough one for Hill, I think. Give me Ducote by a pretty lopsided decision. One thing you can still say about Hill is she's still a super tough out. There are very few fighters that have actually finished Hill in 8 years now of fighting like the best strawweights in the world, pretty much fight in and fight out. But give me Ducote in a pretty lopsided decision here.
Yeah. Wow. I'd say this. You're very confident for a fight that's pretty much a pick 'em, as you said. Yeah, you're higher on. I mean, she looked really good in her last fight. I'll give you that. And Angel Hill, like you said, we know we are. She's 37. Like, she's not going to make vast improvements. She's a high output kickboxer that she kind of like does. She has to be in. There's like there's a bunch of range, but if you condense them, there's three main ranges: all the way out the pocket, all the way in. She does best all the way out, all the way in. She wants to be on the outside, kick in, kind of a point kickboxer. Not much power, but she's got good movement, good footwork, good head movement. Works behind a long jab. Her slip right hand is her best strike. She also has a really good check left hook. I like that she goes to the body. She beat up Diakiese with body shots. But a mistake that she makes is just she overextends on her punches. She leaves herself open to counters, even though she's quicker. She doesn't think about that defense in that way. She's good all the way in, so she's got a pretty good Muay Thai clinch game. She's good at framing, blasting knees up the middle, creating little spaces. But she's a terrible defensive wrestler. I mean, it's cost her so many fights against the highest level. You keep mentioning she gets put against top 5, top 10 fighters, and that wrestling is always. And even like top 15, Raina Marcos beat her with wrestling. Claudia Gadelia beat her wrestling. Michelle Waterson beat her wrestling. And then her last loss for Genaro was because of wrestling. Yep. Ducote, I like a lot of things you're saying about her. Again, years ago, if I went back 3 years ago, I've been saying the same thing. I would have thought Ducote was someone who just got brought in on short notice because someone fell off a card or they needed somebody, and she's a seasoned veteran that I know she'll make weight, kind of thing like that. Not someone who kind of might be making some noise in the UFC. She's got high output. She's someone who builds as the fight goes on, and she gets stronger and stronger. She's a typical boxer with a boxing skill like you get from training boxing. A lot of L stepping, good at keeping her chin tucked. She walks down her opponents where she's like a pressure counter striker. She slips shots and counters really well. Everything's tight inside shots. She cuts off the cage really well. She gets in the pocket and she unloads big shots. And then we see the kicking game in her last fight. She murdered Jessica Penny with just calf kicks to the point where Penny couldn't walk. She does throw some naked calf kicks. I think she's going to get counted for that. And actually, Angel Hill, someone who can do pretty well in that case. She's a little heavy on that front foot, which opens her up to calf kicks herself. But all the stuff we just said about her striking, that's all new. That was not her. You mentioned she's from Oklahoma, like a mecca of wrestling. Oklahoma State University is the as decorated as it comes when it comes to wrestling. She's a good wrestler who she's not your female wrestler where she gets in the clinch and she's going for throws. No, she wrestles like a collegiate wrestler. She shoots in the hips. She's got a nice reactionary double. She's good at like grabbing a single and running the pipe. She has 4 submission wins on her record. So this is a really even matchup. That's why I'm not nearly as confident as you. I am also going with Ducote. And it simply comes down to me is there's more avenues of victory for her. She's really focused on her striking recently. And that's where obviously Angel Hill wants the fight to be, her movement and everything. But I like the way Ducote cuts off the cage. I think she can match. Hill needs a kickboxing match. Even in the clinch, I think Ducote can win that because of the wrestling background. Ducote could win a kickboxing match if it stays that way. She can win a pocket boxing match. I think that would favor in a pocket boxing match. And I think she clearly wins a grappling match, especially if she's on top, which I think she would be the one to be on top. That's why I'm picking her. But again, like I'm not as confident as you are because Angel Hill, she's a crafty veteran. She's been around for a long time. I'm still not like completely sold on Ducote, like that this is a new, better version because this is a step up in competition, in my opinion, for her. You know, Jessica Penne is like bottom of the UFC barrel for kind of shot fighter. While Angel Hill, say what you want about her, like she seems like she should be like a gatekeeper, but she's beaten like the lower level UFC fighters. Angel Hill's going to beat those people still. It's just that she's not a top 15 fighter. She's 16th. Like, you know, that's what she is. Mm-hmm. So I'll take her to win. I'll take her Ducote to win by decision. Being that it's Angel Hill, it'll probably be a split decision. Like Angel Hill probably lose a split decision. So give me Ducote by split decision.
Next up at UFC Orlando, and at least as the card is currently constructed, the top prelim is a welterweight matchup between Niko Price and Phil Rowe. Price, the 33-year-old Florida native, is 15-5 with 2 no contests overall. He is 7-5 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He won his last time out. It was a unanimous decision over Alex Cowboy Oliveira back last October at UFC Fight Night Santos versus Walker. Prior to that, he had lost a unanimous decision against Michel Pereira in July of 2021 at UFC 264. He will look to make it 2 wins in a row against Rowe, the 32-year-old New York native, 9-3 overall. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC out of the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series. He beat Leon Shabazian on the Contender Series all the way back in August of 2019, immediately missed like a year and a half, didn't debut in the UFC until last February, lost a decision to Gabe Green there. All kinds of shine off the prospect at that point, but he's come back since then with 2 TKO wins over Orion Kosi and Jason Witt. Having knocked out those 2, apparently he's earned graduation to the next level of UFC welterweight, the kind of that fringe, almost rankable guy. Price is it, and Price is the slight favorite here. He's minus 140, Rowe plus 110 or so. Keith, I'm almost surprised that Niko Price only has 2 no contests. He has such a penchant for weird stuff happening in his fights. The no contest, his no contest 2 years ago against Donald Cerrone, it was the most Niko Price moment ever. Well, not only because it got turned to a no contest because they both failed their drug tests, only Cerrone failed for an actual PED and Price just failed for weed. But my favorite memory of that fight, and it's lost now. Yeah, when you know it, but for the audience,
that's great.
When they announced the draw, because this fight was a draw, Cerrone looked dejected, and Niko Price looked like he just won the lottery. It said everything you needed to know about both guys, because Cerrone's like, how did I get here? You know, I was one of probably the 5 most popular fighters in the sport, and I fought for a UFC title, and
He's
Niko Price is like,
Connor.
yes. It's
It's
so
like
great.
I don't listen. I love all our European listeners. You know me, guys. I love all you guys. I love every one of our listeners, even the ones who hate my picks and want to hate my personality, my storytelling. I still love you guys. All love. South American, Brazilian, all you guys. I don't know jack shit about soccer, or football, whatever you want to call it. I just know that America tied England, so suck it, England. But again, I don't know jack shit. I couldn't name a single player on the team. I don't know a single player. I watched the last 30 seconds of the game. It was in the last 25 seconds of it, I was absolutely bored out of my mind. But England and America tied. And from my understanding, like England was like super sad about it, and America was like, "Yeah, it's fantastic. We got a tie." So
Yep,
that was so like Niko Price is America, and I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
England's down already. Don't at me like it's the greatest. Fine, guys. You think it's great? Fine, fantastic. But that's what I always tell people. I was getting to a friend like, "Oh, you're big into MMA, and it's 100 million people, 10 billion. There's only 7 billion people in the world, but somehow 10 billion people watching the World Cup. Like it's fantastic. Okay, fine.
Is it one championship?
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I don't know if Messi and Ronaldo, I don't know if they're even in it. There's only 2 soccer players I know. Wouldn't recognize either person if they walk in my door right now. I just know the names. I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people. I don't care what the biggest thing in soccer would happen if freaking Mexico beats Brazil. I don't know who the teams are. I don't know. But if that happened, that wouldn't be the lead of SportsCenter. If Ronaldo and Messi, I know Ronaldo plays for Portugal. I have no idea who Messi plays for. If
He's Argentinian. Yeah.
Argentina, okay.
Yeah.
Don't know the guy's first name. If those two guys just duked it out at the, what do they call it? What's a 50-yard line? What's it called in soccer? The middle of the field?
Center of the pitch. Yeah.
Center of the field. If those two guys got in a fist fight, the lead to SportsCenter is those two guys getting a fist fight, not whatever team won.
Like Dana White told us this back in 2003.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's 2 guys who play.
Yeah. You guys over there. So shut up. If I said I've done this with my friends who are like, I have guys in my office who are big into golf. I'm like, oh my god. And I'm like, I don't care if freaking Justin whatever won the U.S. Open or something. If freaking Tiger Woods got in a fist fight with Phil Mickelson, that's leading the SportsCenter. Anyways, what were we talking about? Niko Price?
We're talking about Niko Price and Phil Rowe. I mean, that pool of action fighter welterweights that kind of hovered around there for a couple of years. Some of them turned a corner. Vicente Luque turned a corner, came within a whisper of a title shot. Not quite the same. Yeah. Not quite the same situation, but Jorge Masvidal turned from an exciting fighter who lost too many split decisions into somebody who became super popular and was in the title picture. Can Niko Price turn the corner? Do you think he will? And corner turned or not, does he beat Phil Rowe?
Yeah, if he's gonna do it, he's gonna do it right now. This guy's 33 years old, and I mean he's older than 33 because doesn't he have like 87 children?
He has 8 or 9 kids, like that. Like you look at his face, and he just looks like something's been drained out of him.
Like, dude, and they don't sell condoms in Florida. Like I don't know, like come on, dude. No pull-out game.
I mean, Niko Price looks like a guy that buys gas station boner pills. The condoms are right next to them when you buy those things, Niko.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with buying gas station boner pills.
No, man, you need to.
Essentially, you mean a lady, you don't want to mess up the first time, with a woman. But anyways, back to boner pills and Niko Price. Yeah, I like Niko. He's so much fun. Like,
oh yeah.
Like if he wins, he's gonna say something wacky. What I like about him is it doesn't seem like an act with him. Like where there's guys who they try to promote fights and they're trying to put on a persona. Like no, that's just him. He's just nuts. Yeah. He's super athletic. He's not a bad technician. Like he's a better boxer than he gets credit for because we always think about this wild man. And that's what we want to see. That's what I'm hoping to see, even though it's not better for his chances of winning. But obviously for my own entertainment, I want Rock'em Sock'em Wild Man. But when he stays composed, he's got a good long jab. He's got serious power. I mean, look at he's a big guy for the weight class. Yeah. He marches forward, but he's like, what's going to happen. As soon as he gets tagged with a shot, he's going to stop brawling. He's got this willing to eat one to land one. He's brawled with guys you shouldn't brawl with. He's brawled with Jeff Neal. So I don't think he'll be surprised to, don't be surprised if he brawls with Philip Rowe. But we saw Justin Gaethje change a corner on that. So,
dude, almost all of his losses are like Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal, Abdul Razak Al Hassan. It's almost always him going toe to toe with a guy he shouldn't.
Yeah. So he doesn't like being pressured. Like Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal, they both had success pushing him back with their own power. So that's kind of the key if you get him on his back foot. He's good in the clinch. Like he's an underrated grappler. He gets in the clinch. He's got some mean boxing, dirty boxing, good elbows, good knees. He really uses like those 8 points. He uses his height really well to kind of whip down on the head and kind of get good angles. He's a weak defensive wrestler. Michel Pereira took him down 3 times in that fight. But he's a good submission artist. He does good at scrambling, end up in really bad positions and getting scrambles. Look at the Randy Costa fight. Randy Brown fight. Randy Brown fight. But the one thing about those scrambles, he puts himself in bad positions, and he gets a good guy who's going to beat him up from there. Now, Philip Rowe, we talk about how big Niko Price is. Philip Rowe is massive welterweight. I mean, he's long and lengthy. He has like an 80-inch reach. He's a well-rounded athlete. He uses movement well, though he does back straight up to avoid shots, which is a little bit of an issue, especially against a guy like a wild man like Niko Price. But he's good technical on his feet. He keeps his range well. He does good to kind of keep his opponents at the end of his punches. His straight right down the pipe is his best thing. He can drop his hands a little, which I don't like. But I love that he works the body. I mean, go back to the Orion Kosi fight. He murdered him with body shots. I'd say he has underrated power, which is kind of weird because he's not known for his power. But then you look at him like, why isn't he known for his power? He's got 5 knockout wins. He knocked out Jason Witt in his last fight. He doesn't kick enough for a guy who's really long. Like I hope he adds more kicks. But because they're powerful. He's very strong in the clinch, though. So he's kind of like when we talk about Angel Hill, like all the way. He doesn't want to be in the pocket. He wants to use his length on the outside or get in the inside, get in the clinch area, blast some knees in there. He's not much of an offensive wrestler. I would more describe him as a grappler, but he'll find a way to get to the fight to the ground. And when you look at like this guy stays busy. He's always competing in grappling competitions. He is a submission threat. He loves the guillotine, which happens a lot when you're a tall guy. You can just reach over and grab it. I don't like that he'll pull guard sometimes. I shouldn't say pull. He'll jump guard to get a submission, which I definitely don't like. He also likes to look for submissions off his back instead of scrambling. You don't want to do that against Niko Price. Well, Niko Price is not like this fantastic jiu-jitsu guy. He hits hard, so you don't want a guy dropping like hammer fist while you're looking for submission. I want to see Rowe against a strong wrestler where he's pinned down, see how he does against that. But when he's on top, he's got good ground and pound. So, could talk about this fight way too long. Price has the power, but Rowe has really improved his striking lately. And it's so rare for Price to fight someone who's going to be bigger than him and longer than him. He doesn't have that advantage. I think Rowe avoids the power strikes on the feet, which it's funny because most of you'd say to Price, don't become a wild man. Maybe you want to against Rowe. Maybe you don't want to be in the outside. You don't have a technical kickboxing match with Rowe on the outside. I think he avoids the power shots. I think he lands some of the better shots. I think he gets a takedown or two. I think he beats up Price on the ground. I can see some wild scrambles happening. I actually think Rowe's going to catch him with something. Give me Rowe by 3rd round submission.
I'm 100% with you here. Price, by the eyeball test, seems to be fighting as well as he ever has. He does seem a little bit more composed than he was in his truly wild days like 4 or 5 years ago. But fact remains that in the last couple of years, his wins are over shot Alex Oliveira, shot James Vick, and a draw with shot Donald Cerrone who was way smaller than him to boot. And
was Cerrone completely shot at that point?
Cerrone, 2 years ago? I think he was pretty shot.
Nah, he probably was.
And he was
always... Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. He was absolutely shot. He lost 4 in a row.
Yeah. And against the good fighters, he's come up badly short. They've been able to do to him kind of what they wanted. Luque and Neal knocked him out. Pereira is in his kind of I can wrestle too mode where he's like just showing up and like suplexing people, and he was able to do that to him. Yeah, I'm not surprised that Price is the slight favorite here. He's by far the more experienced fighter. He's by far the more known quantity. Rowe, there are question marks just because he did have that long layoff, and he's even since being back has only fought like once per year. But assuming Rowe is the same guy who dusted Jason Witt and Ryan Cosey in his last 2 fights, I do think he's going to be too much for Price here, and I could see him getting the finish here as well. Like, Price has always been susceptible to his opponent's offense. Give me Rowe to just catch Price in the middle of some wild exchange in the pocket and put him down. Rowe by second round TKO. The UFC on ESPN 42 main card kicks off with a middleweight matchup between Eryk Anders and Kyle Daukaus. Anders, the 35-year-old Alabama native, is 14-7 with 1 no contest overall. He is 6-7 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He is 4-6 at middleweight. He's had a couple of fights at light heavyweight. I think he had one at like 195-pound catch weight, or maybe that was Daukaus. But at any rate, he's 4-6 at middleweight, where he's scheduled to fight here. He is on a 2-fight losing streak, having gotten armbarred by Andre Muniz last December, then dropping a split decision to Junyong Park this May at UFC Fight Night Home versus Vieira. So he'll look to get back in the win column against Daukaus. The 29-year-old Philadelphia native is 11-3 with 1 no contest overall. He is 2-3 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC as a veteran of the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series, though he was not signed immediately. He won on the show, wasn't signed because that was back when not every winner was signed, went back to CFFC, won 2 more fights by Darce choke, and got to the UFC. He lost his last time out. It was a quick and brutal stoppage at the hands of Roman Dolidze. Well, the hands and knee of Roman Dolidze, who we will be talking about in just a few minutes here. So that was back in June. He'll be looking to get back in the win column himself. He is heavily favored to do so. Daukaus -200, Anders +170. Keith, I'm going to toss this to you first, but if I were Keith, I'd be like, Kyle Daukaus should not be -200 against anyone in the UFC except maybe Eryk Anders.
Yeah.
This is 2 fighters who, I mean,
I saw Eryk Anders get beat up by Johnny from the Karate Kid. So
yeah, just
I don't know if you watch it.
Yeah. Well, I went and watched it after like we did an interview with him about it, and I was like, I want to see this. But it's 2 guys that have proven to be talented but kind of unreliable in the UFC. Just one is older and has been talented and unreliable for a lot longer.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me what you see here. And I'm more interested if you still see any significant upside in Daukaus at age 29.
Yeah, he's 29, so he's in those prime years, so I do like that. But, I mean, his last loss was tough. They might say more about his opponent than him, and Anders, I mean, if you've watched any of the breakdown shows we've done Anders a lot. Yeah, at this point, he's a southpaw who, like, I don't know what he's good at. He's got low output. He gets this credit for being this NCAA football player, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, whatever the hell it was.
I mean, it was literally like 13 and a half years ago.
Okay, 13 and a half years ago.
Yeah.
It's like when people talk about like wrestlers and like, oh yeah, he was Sarah Man, she was Olympic silver medalist. Yeah, 20 years ago. Like, that's not the same level. So he gets credit for this like unbelievable athletic skill, being at University of Alabama as high as it gets for NCAA football, but those athletic skills are faded. He's slow. He's plodding. Like I mentioned, he has the low output. Even when he does let his hands go, he throws the same combination a lot. He just wings his overhand left, where most times his opponent's away from him before he even lands it. He has some sting on his shots when you go back to like the Darren Stewart, so he can still hit. But I think his power is overrated. They make him sound like he's going out there like a prime, Vanderlei Silva or Quentin Jackson, is just starching guys with one shot. No, he doesn't. He's been rocked a lot in the past. Not to mention his NCAA football. Like there was some like there's some good thing. That could be a bad thing too. The amount of collisions he's taken with the run, and we talked about this about with a running back or lineman trying to block him. So that concerns me. It's funny because if he wins, it's not going to be because of his striking. It's going to be because of his grappling. I think he's an underrated grappler. And that's to his credit because that obviously wasn't what he was going to be known for. Which is kind of really weird to think that we assume that a college football player is going to like have knockout power on hands, but like not wrestle. Like, oh, weird. The linebacker is going to have a hard time taking people down.
like shooting through people's hips is just literally what he does for a job.
Yeah. Was he a linebacker or a DN? It doesn't matter.
He was a linebacker or an outside
linebacker,
outside
edge rusher. Yeah. Now the Europeans are like, what the hell? He doesn't know who what Messi's first name is, but he's talking about what the hell is this University of Alabama they're talking about? Actually, no, they do know that because it gets blasted in their face every time Eryk Anders fights. But I think he's an underrated grappler. He gets a lot of takedowns. Not a submission threat, but obviously he's got strong ground and pound being how big he is. He has been subbed in the past. I mean, like Andre Muniz subbed him really quick, but like everybody gets subbed by Andre Muniz. So like that, I don't hold that against him. Daukaus, he's a southpaw who's a pretty technically sound striker. He's also like a pressure striker. Very relaxed, very composed, doesn't really tense up much, good accuracy. He does keep his hands low as he throws from his hips a little bit, which provides weird angles, but also gives you some defensive holes. I say his hands are pretty fast. His straight left is his like sharp straight punch. That's like his moneymaker. I like that he just touches, but then he unloads when there's an opening. He does it like how you should do. That's what Israel Adesanya does. That's what Anderson Silva did. It's what the best guys do. I'd say he has plus power, which a guy you look at him, you don't think he's deceivingly big. Like you think of like a skinny guy, and then you see him like match up against guys, and like, oh wow, he's thicker than he looks. He sits on his punches really well when like I said, when there's an opening to draw power. He's got good kicks from the outside, hard kicks to the body, especially when he's going against like an orthodox fighter. He's a strong grappler. He is a submission threat. He's got 9 subs. They're all like guillotine, Darce Joes. I mean, his nickname is the Darce Knight, which is a terrible nickname, but he will chase a submission and lose position, which I hate. But if he's not, and if he's on his bottom, he plays BJJ, so those are some things I do hate. And I'm worried about his durability now. I mean, he's been rocked in his last fight. He's been hurt in a lot of fights, and that's obviously concerning. That said, I like Daukaus here. I think he's better than Anders everywhere. I think he's faster than him. I think he might even be. Well, I don't want to say stronger than him, but he hits harder than him. I think he's a better grappler, especially as submission grappling. I think he picks apart Anders from range. I see him landing the harder kicks and keeping his distance with that. I think if he gets the clinch, I think he might even hold his own. I don't know if he's going to stop Anders because to Anders' credit, he's pretty durable. Even though I did talk about worried about his durability, I say Daukaus blows him out in like a blowout decision. We might even get like a 10-8 round.
I'm with you there. Part of me, I mean, I don't think Anders has top 10 upside in either division, but part of me kind of hoped that after the whole Darren Stewart debacle, he would just move up to 205 and stay there. It's just as wide open as middleweight, and he would be comparatively faster there. And I mean, like you mentioned, he's never been a lights out one punch guy at middleweight either, but I just think he looks better at 205 than at 185. Here, I'm with you. And, you stop just short of saying that, Daukaus is stronger than a guy that's built like Anders and comes from the background he does. But you know what? If they're in the clinch and one guy is just like manhandling the other with a collar, like with a collar tie, I think it's going to be Daukaus. Like functional MMA strength, he is at least as strong.
Yeah. Like if they bench pressed, Anders is bench pressing more than him, squatting and deadlifting. Yeah. But yeah, functionally, no, I think you're right.
It would be interesting if Anders came out and was like, you know what? Daukaus is defensive wrestling is probably his weakest point. If I can take him down 3 times and not get Bravo choked, I can beat this guy in a shitty fight and keep my job. I'd be interested to see if he went in with just that.
Yeah, that is the avenue of victory. I just pray we don't get it.
Yeah, I pray we don't get it, and I don't think we have to worry about it. I'm with you. I think he's going to oblige Daukaus with Daukaus's fight, or at least not try to impose that kind of grindy game plan on him. And like you mentioned, Anders has been tough to stop. If he was easy to get a cheap submission over, he wouldn't have been able to spend 15 minutes with Gerald Meerschaert. He would have made a mistake, and Meerschaert would have gotten him. Andre Muniz is a world-class grappler, so I'm not thinking Daukaus gets to finish either. But I think he wins this going away. I'm with you, Daukaus by a dominant decision. Next up on the UFC Orlando main card is another middleweight matchup. This one for slightly higher stakes, as it is Roman Dolidze versus Jack Hermansson. Dolidze, the 34-year-old Georgian, is 11-1 overall. He is 5-1 since joining the UFC to relatively little fanfare just a little over, or just a little under 2.5 years ago. He won his first 2 fights in pretty dominant fashion at light heavyweight, decided to drop to 185 for some reasons that only he could tell, but dropped as an undefeated fighter, lost right out of the gate, his only career loss to Trevin Giles last March, but stuck with it, stayed at 185, and has won 3 in a row. Laureano Staropoli, Kyle Daukaus, and Phil Hawes have all fallen to the hulking Georgian. The most recent of those, the Hawes fight, was just back in October 29th in the UFC Fight Night Cater versus Allen card. But he steps up here on short notice to fight Hermansson, who had been scheduled to take on Derek Brunson on this card. Hermansson, the 34-year-old Swede training out of Norway, is 23-7 overall. He is 10-5 in the UFC. Has alternated wins and losses for his last 7 fights. Most recently, he took a unanimous decision over Chris Curtis at UFC Fight Night Blades versus Aspinall back in July. That allowed him to get back in the win column after his split decision loss to Sean Strickland in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 200 in February. The odds here are fairly close, but Hermansson is the favorite. He's minus 160, Dolidze plus 140 as the slight to moderate underdog. Keith, there comes a time when we're doing our matchups on the recaps of these cards that we'll say, okay, this fighter, fighter X, this promising up-and-comer, has earned the right to take on a bigger name, and see if they actually belong on main cards, see if they actually belong in the top 10. This is that moment for Dolidze, and he's taking it on sort of short notice. Does that factor into how you see this fight, and who do you think wins?
Yeah, it's a big concern for sure, especially when you look at Dolidze.
Dude,
it's a concern every time he fights. Like, man, this guy got a gas out or what? Let me ask you this. Are you more excited for this fight or less, than the Brunson fight?
Oh, I'm much more excited for this than for the Brunson-Hermansson fight, because here, I mean, honestly, I think both guys stand to gain more out of this. If Dolidze absolutely dusts Hermansson, he gets fast-tracked to top 10, if not top 5 matchups. If Hermansson sorry, go ahead.
No, I cut you off. Finish.
If Hermansson destroys Dolidze, that kind of regains some title picture shine for him, because otherwise he's settled into, I'm going to be the guy in the lower half of the top 10 that just kind of bounces back and forth, alternates wins and losses until I turn 38, and then the wheels fall off.
Yeah, see, I'm worried about Hermansson, because if he wins, I don't know if he gets that. I don't think he gets excited as you think, because people say, "Oh, who's Roman Dolidze? Is he even ranked? Is he? If you beat Derek Brunson, well, that's a pretty good win." Dolidze, on the other hand, I think it's 180 opposite. You beat Hermansson, you've arrived. But the reason why I'm excited is it answers that. It answers Dolidze has arrived. If we had Brunson or Hermanson, I go, oh, cool. Like we played a little game, like how far down the list did they get the phone call?
Yeah.
But I'm not excited about a new arrival in the division. So that's why I am also more excited. I'd probably be more excited about this fight if Dolidze had a full camp and there's no excuses built in or anything like that. So stylistically, it's a very intriguing fight because you have such a technically sound guy versus like this pure aggression, scary killer. Like he's a scary looking dude. Hermanson, like we kind of know he's not a great athlete, but he's so technically sound. He's also very smart. He's good. We've said this before. He's always going to put himself in the best position possible to win. He's keeps his strikes very tight. He's a builder. He gets stronger as the fight goes on. He's got good output. He's never overthrows. He kind of just touches. He isn't like this big power puncher. Like that's the one knocking him for a high level middleweight. He's not going to start you with one shot. I mean, he obviously could. Anybody could, but you know, it's more unlikely. But he's got really good movement. He's very good at like landing strikes when you're trying to chase him, missing, and then he tags you on the counters. He's really good when he stays all the way out and then he pops in the pocket and lands shots. And he's good at that because he changes up his rhythm, so it's kind of hard to pick up his timing. Like Chris Curtis had trouble with that. He's good at coming and attacking with a bunch of different strikes. So he has a lot of variety in the strikes. Very good kicking game, great calf kicks. He also likes those John Jones oblique kicks. He has been hurt in the body. That's the area. Jauregui hurt him a little bit in the body. Chris Curtis, when he had some success with some body shots. Jauregui also had some success backing him up. Now, again, that Jauregui fight's going back a little bit. So Sean Strickland beat him up with a jab. Like he struggled getting around Sean Strickland's jab. But he's got a solid chin. He's pretty durable. He take a shot and keep going. He's a great wrestler. He out-grappled, like I keep saying these guys' names, but Talis Leites, Hanato Jauregui, Edmund Shabazian. At times he was taken down. Marvin Vittori's much bigger than him, strong guy. That's impressive. And he has 6 submission wins. Now, Roman Dolidze, again, he's a wild card. You just look at him, like he's a definition of like testosterone. Like he's just I mean, his muscles pop out of like every inch of his body. They show him as this crushing power guy, and that's, I mean, he does have that. Mm-hmm. But he's more technically sound than you think. He sets up his attacks with feints well. He throws hard power shots, but he sets them up. He didn't just wildly throw them. We saw that against Kyle Daukaus. He has got a great overhand right. He's got a great crushing left hook. I am worried about his cardio, and again, especially on a short notice fight, because he throws so hard. But we haven't really seen him gas out. He has thudding kicks, and he also checks kicks. He's very strong in the clinch. He crushes body shots with knees, like gets in the clinch, unhooks. He's a good wrestler. He is a little bit of a submission threat. He has 3 submissions in his career, so I like that. So prediction, man, I think this might be the hardest fight on the card because it's going to be one of those, if Dolidze wins, we're going to go, holy shit, wow, look at this guy. Should he fight Chimaev next? Like, how would he do against Alex Pereira? Like, he's going to be the fun, new, sexy toy. As Cheyenne Bodies about that. If Hermanson wins, we're going to go, oh, of course he wins. Like, he's so smart. He's so good. He's so technically sound. Of course he wasn't rattled. So where do I lean? And like I said, I've had a hard time because right away when the fight was booked, they go, oh, too soon. Hermanson's going to do what Hermanson does. But then I thought, what was the last time someone just went right after Hermanson and bullied him? Well, that was Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier came right at him. And can't Dolidze do the same thing?
He can. He could.
And can he even do it even worse than Jared Cannonier? Dolidze is so extremely confident right now that I don't think he'll fear Hermanson. I think he's just going to come right at him. I think he's going to throw hard power shots. You know what? I'm gonna say he does it. I say he blasts Hermanson. I think we have an oh shit moment. We got him on the Bulls list. We're playing a game like who can he knock out next? Oh, how would he do against Brunson?
You're texting me going, okay, I guess we need to match make Dolidze too.
Yeah. So give me Dolidze first round knockout.
It's funny that you say that because, you said, can Dolidze do these things? Can he beat Hermanson? Yes. And if he's going to, I think we're going to know it within 30 seconds where, he's too fast. And when he touches, like you see the way Hermanson reacts, you're like, oh shit, this isn't going to go long, and he's just going to overwhelm him. I can absolutely see that happening. And if that happens, like I say, I'm going to know it real quick, and I'm probably going to get a cold and not join you on the recap. But I'm going to believe that when I see it, because Hermanson, he has been blitzed, but normally he is an extremely composed fighter. He's an extremely well-prepared fighter. Like, he knows as well as his opponent does where their best avenue to victory lies. And to the extent he's able to, he's going to maximize.
Sorry, let me ask you something. Could that be against Hermanson this because he didn't have the full camp for Dolidze?
It could. That's not.
But he probably also instantly that fight got booked to him. He pulled an all-nighter before he even accepted the fight. He went straight in the books, looking at him, doing film study. He probably watched one of our breakdowns.
But he is the kind of guy that probably did watch some tape before even taking the fight on short notice. Not having 12 weeks to train for as dangerous a fighter as Dolidze will absolutely work against him. The flip side, Dolidze with what must be a substantial weight cut. And I've complimented him before on when he decided to go from 205 to 185, he actually retooled his physique. He lost a little bit of muscle so he doesn't have a stupid water cut. But he's still got a substantial cut, and he'd had less time to get to that. I mean, the guy fought almost exactly 2 months ago. We know that he has enough gas to go 3 rounds if he's either kicking the other guy's ass, like the John Allen fight. It says split decision, but he won all 3 rounds. He dominated John Allen. That was a terrible decision. He beat Laureano Staropoli handily. The Trevin Giles fight, he lost, but he didn't lose because he was more tired. He has enough gas to go at a moderate pace for 3 rounds. We know that. But maybe that'll be compromised, making 185 on shorter notice. I think the longer this fight goes, I think it does favor Hermanson. And that's the opposite of the norm, because normally the longer a fight goes, the more it favors the more dynamic finisher. You just got that much more time to get in the one shot or the one takedown that you need. But here I do think it favors Hermanson. If Hermanson makes it to the end of the first round, I'm feeling a lot better about this pick, obviously. And, I will as the fight continues to go along. But give me Hermanson by decision. But I will not be comfortable anytime, especially in the first 3 to 5 minutes of this fight. I'm prepared to be really, really wrong about this one. But give me Hermanson.
Yeah, the longer the fight goes on, the more you start feeling confident of Hermanson. Because, I mean, if Hermanson wins quick, he catches him a submission right away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, which he's done a few. He guillotined Mearshart. He got that heel hook on Gastelum that was 100% Gastelum just having a lapse in attention. And Hermanson said, oh, no, we're not done. Yeah. Next up at UFC Orlando, it is this is my reward for knocking out Derek Lewis matchup, as it is Tai Tuivasa and Sergei Pavlovich meeting on the main card. Tuivasa, the 29-year-old Australian, is 14-4 overall. He is 8-4 in the UFC. He lost his last time out. It was, kind of his headlining possible breakout moment matchup with former interim champ Cyril Gane, but he was pretty much outclassed on his way to a 3rd round TKO loss. Prior to that, he had won 5 in a row, all by knockout, all in the first 2 rounds over Stefan Struve, Harry Hunsucker, Greg Hardy, Augusto Sakai, and Derek Lewis. So he's going to look to get back in the win column here. Standing in front of him is Pavlovich, the 30-year-old Russian. 16-1 overall, 4-1 since joining the UFC as a former Fight Nights Global heavyweight champ. He dropped his debut in the UFC to Alistair Overeem almost exactly 4 years ago. Since then, he has gone 4-0, and really the only thing that has been able to slow him down has been COVID era travel restrictions and visa issues. He's knocked out Marcelo Golm, Maurice Green, Shamil Abdurakhimov, and Lewis all in the first round. The most recent of those, the Lewis win, just 55 seconds of the first round at UFC 277 in July. So he'll be looking to make it 5 straight, probably propel himself into the title picture here. He is favored to do so. Pavlovich is minus 200, Tuivasa plus 170. Keith, both these guys kind of vaulted themselves into prominence by knocking out Derek Lewis.
Yeah.
But is Tai Tuivasa on track to becoming Derek Lewis? Is he going to be the guy that is slightly, like his skills are slightly underestimated just because of his personality and the way he looks, but he's ultra dangerous, usually exciting, but never quite able to get over the hump? Is he going to just settle in and become Derek Lewis?
That's a really good question, because I think we look at Derek Lewis much different than the general public does.
Sure.
Like, we give him a lot of credit for his actual skills. Yeah, again, it's fading, and
but
we're supposed to see him, a week or a couple weeks ago. I was very interested to see what we got in him, but I think we think of them as like slugging power punchers, and obviously they are, but there's some skills and there's some athleticism they don't get credit for because of they're supposed to be the goofy. You never really took their title run serious. They're just here to have fun. Do they even train? Like,
it's the Mark Hunt like archetype, just the next second and third generation of that.
It is, so the comparison's fair. Like, it's why it's why they got matched up against each other. And it was a fun fight that everyone was looking forward to. I think that's a really good question. So like, Tuivasa, he moves really well for heavyweight. Like, he doesn't get credit for that. His hands are pretty quick. Though he throws a lot of power shots, and to his credit, I think he's become a lot more patient. I love how Chael Sonnen pointed out that he's kind of started measuring his shots instead of just throwing big haymakers. He has huge power. I mean, like you said, he knocked out Derek Lewis, and that's all you need to know about his power. No one talks about his thudding calf kicks, which sets up so much of his power shots. But he's been hurt a lot in the past. He's been knocked out by Ciryl Gane in his last fight. You go back to, like, even when he knocked out Greg Hardy was coming in to finish him because he got hurt by Greg Hardy. And not like almost out, but he was buckled a little bit. Mm-hmm. Going way back, Junior Dos Santos put him out. So, his chin is still a little questionable, but he's only, what do you say, 29? 28,
29, yep.
Yeah, which is like being like 12 if you're heavyweight.
Yeah. He could literally do this for another 10 years and nobody would blink.
Absolutely. I mean, look at Andrei Arlovski. Andrei Arlovski's had like 3 careers after where we gave up on him. Yeah. He started to wrestle, at least train his wrestling a lot, because that was such an easy thing. Like, he was thrown to his back with the slowest headlock in history by Stefan Struve. But though since then, I said not Stefan Struve. Excuse me. Yeah. He actually took down Stefan Struve. And then he actually showed some takedown defense against Stefan Struve. So he's trying to become like a sprawling brawler. So, but he's shown that it's much harder to get taken down. But if he's put on his back, he's like kind of like a turtle on his shell. Like, he struggles there. Pavlovich might be the best athlete in the division, next to Ciryl Gane.
Yeah, no, like very much like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like, he moves well. He's got fast hands. He's very good technically. He throws straight, sharp strikes down the pipe. His straight right is really good. His left hook is crushing. He's got big, big power. I mean, he's got 4 straight stoppages in the first round, all by TKO. He knocked Derek Lewis out easily. He doesn't have much of a kicking game though. Like I love for him to add some kicking, and he's purely more of a boxer. He also doesn't check leg kicks. He hasn't wrestled in the UFC. I keep pointing this out. He hasn't wrestled in the UFC, but when we saw him on Fight Nights Global, he did wrestle. It was actually like such a big part of his game. He gets some takedowns. I shouldn't say big part of his game, but it was like a complementary to his game. Alistair Overeem showed that if you put him on his back, he struggles there, but I kind of give him a pass for that. That was like the first fight in the UFC. He gets a legend against Alistair Overeem, who is really good on the ground.
And I was going to say, speaking of underrated skill sets,
oh my god,
his top position grappling and ground and pound are some of the most underrated skills.
It's like Cain Velasquez and Fabrice Verdum, then and Fedor, then Alistair Overeem. He's like the next tier down. Like he's really good on the ground, way more than he gets credit for. And Pavlovich really isn't a submission threat. So this is a huge matchup. Like you could make an argument this could be the main event, which I'm surprised it is even higher up, being that like they love to push the heavyweights high. Pavlovich coming off a huge win. I know Tuivasa is coming off a loss to Terrell Gamba's last fight was the main event. I think this fight deserves higher than RDA and Barbareno. Like, it should at least be the co-main event. I was just surprised by that.
And we're never arguing for a heavyweight fight to be further up a card. It's always like, why the hell is this thing on the main card?
Yeah. That's why I was surprised. Some of the placements of the fights here are a little weird, but again, it's a really stacked card, so it is what it is. And when you're a former champ, somewhat recent, like not recent, but like somewhat recent, not talking about Andre Arlovski 100 years ago, but like that holds a little bit of weight, and rightfully so for RDA. But Tuivasa has improved so much. He has so much power, but I'm taking Pavlovich. I really believe in his power. I believe in his speed. I really think he might be a title challenger one day. I think he might win the title. Like, I'm not picking him to win the title, so don't cook at me or anything like that. Yeah. Just the potential's there. And I actually do think Tuivasa, the potential's there too. If he continues to improve, but especially Pavlovich. I think Pavlovich lands the biggest shots. I say he finishes him. I'm going to say Pavlovich knocks him out in the second round.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you're picking him, and I'm picking him as well here, and I think it's probably for the same reason, that it is that elite athleticism that makes all of his other skills go. And the funny thing is, his actual approach to fighting plays into Tuivasa's hands about as well as you could expect. I mean, he is going to approach this fight as just a boxer. And like that's probably about as favorable a style matchup as Tai Tuivasa is going to get against somebody, because Tuivasa is a good boxer himself. Like you say, he has numbing power, and the elbow that he used to finish Lewis is something he did not have in his toolbox 2 or 3 years ago, because Lewis was swinging down with Tuivasa in the pocket. They'd both been hurt. And normally, in the phone booth with Derek Lewis is one of the worst places in mixed martial arts to be. And Tuivasa just measured him, like knew he was a little inside his boxing range, measured him for that level elbow, and just face planted him. Like there is danger for Pavlovich in this fight, but imagine what the odds would be if Pavlovich's like last 4 fights had included him taking all 4 of those guys down as well, and spending some time wearing them out and pounding on them. And you had faith that he might actually try that on Tuivasa. I think I'm with you. I think Pavlovich is, I mean, he's a top 10 fighter already. He's maybe a top 7 or 8 fighter after Saturday. But if he's going to make it to a title shot, win a title, hold a title, he might do well to like re-diversify his arsenal a little bit. Go back to some of that wrestling he was using. You mentioned he used it in Fight Nights Global. Like his last fight there was against Kirill Sadelnikov, like baby Fedor, and he ragdolled him. And Sadelnikov, I mean, he's never really lived up to being Fedor, but he's not normally a grappling dummy. And Pavlovich made him one. Would love to see that, but I don't think he needs it here. I'm with you. He's going to fight Tuivasa's fight and beat Tuivasa at his own game here. I think his hand speed, the straightness of his punches, you know, he's gonna tag Tuivasa. He hits, if not as hard, close enough to make no difference. Give me Pavlovich by, did you say second round TKO? I'm not going to change that just to be contrarian. That was what I was thinking too. Give me Pavlovich by round.
All right,
round
good.
two.
Then I'll take first round. Screw it.
Oh, okay. Third from the top at UFC on ESPN 42 is a men's flyweight matchup between Matheus Nicolau and Matt Schnell. Nicolau, the 29-year-old Brazilian, is 18-2-1 overall. 3 wins upon joining the UFC. A shocking first round, like head kick knockout loss to Dustin Ortiz, and then 5 more wins leading up to this weekend. He has beaten Alan Gabriel dos Santos, Felipe Efrain, Manel Kopp, Tim Elliott, and David Dvorak. The last 3 of those in the UFC, all by decision. The most recent of those, the Dvorak fight, was back in March at UFC on ESPN, Blades versus Daukaus. He's going to look to make it 6 straight overall, 4 straight in the UFC at the expense of Schnell. The 32-year-old Texan fighting out of Louisiana is 16-6 with 1 no contest overall. He is 6-4 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of the 24th season of The Ultimate Fighter. He won his last time out, choked out Sue Mudarji with a triangle in the second round at UFC on ABC, Ortega versus Rodriguez in July. Prior to that, he had gotten guillotined by Brandon Royval back in May at UFC 274. Odds on this one, some of the wider, one of the wider lines on the card. Nicolau minus 365, Schnell plus 300 as the substantial underdog here.
Holy shit!
Yeah, Keith. For those of you who are listening to this on the streaming platform of your choice, didn't see Keith give an incredulous face when I listed those odds. I was a little puzzled myself, to be honest. I mean, Schnell's record doesn't look great on paper, but it is because he has taken on
everybody.
Just a pretty savage slate of people.
Sounds good.
Some of whom have missed weight, and granted, he's missed weight as well. But you at some point you are what your record is, but he feels better than his record.
Yeah.
Tell me how do you see?
I'm not gonna say Randy Couture, but like when people like, if you don't know, someone doesn't know his history, just look at Randy Couture's record, and you're like,
yeah,
and then you're like, well, he had that freak injury against Vitor Belfort that was like 1 in a million shot, and yeah,
but he also just had some legit losses. I mean, he was
heavyweight
champion of the world when he was 16-8.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know why I brought up Randy Couture, but I just want to talk about record. Yeah, for those who watch the breakdown shows, I don't look at the record. I never, ever look at the odds because I don't want to be influenced. I don't want to be influenced on a close fight and go, oh, Vegas is saying this guy should be a 3-1 favorite, and I go, oh, okay, probably there's something I see, and I try not to do that. But I kind of guesses. I thought this was gonna be like -125, like -3. What would you say it was?
Minus 365.
That's nuts.
And that was kind of the best line available at a reputable place. There were places that had Nicolau minus 450.
Holy Christ! When did Nicolau's really good? I've been a Nicolau guy.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ, when did he turn into freaking
Davison Figueiredo?
Yeah, or not, or freaking Francis Ngannou. Like what the -375? Yeah. Wow. Anyways, you want me to talk about this fight?
Yeah, tell me about this fight.
It's so it's funny because I just talked about the heavyweight fight, being underneath one. I can't believe that fight is underneath one. I'm glad because we always talk about like, hey, give the flyweights some respect. So I'm glad they did. I'm really surprised based on the UFC model. So good for them. Matt Schnell, Jesus, what's the plus on him?
Plus 300.
in chat, I can't remember who it was, but someone said in the chat, they said Keith. I said Keith forgets the the odds after Ben just told him to it like 3 times. Yeah. Someone there looking past Snell. Snell's good. Snell's got really high output. He's a pressure striker. He uses feints really well to set up his power shots. He loves to get in the pocket and unload big shots. He's got really good power for the division. He loves to brawl. He's hurt good fighters. I mean, he hurt Pantoja. He hurt Tyson Nam. He hurt Bontarine. But because of that style, he's been hurt. He's been blasted a lot. I mean, Pantoja knocked him out. Brandon submitted him, but he also hurt him right before that. But despite being a power puncher on the feet, he's a good grappler. Snell, he's good at winning scrambles. He's got 8 submission wins. He loves head attacks. He loves Darce chokes, guillotine, stuff like that. He can get submissions off his back. He got a submission in his last fight.
Yep.
Against a good fighter, which is shocking. It was a great performance by Snell.
Yeah.
Nicolau, so I'm just surprised with the odds. I'm not talking shit about Nicolau. I love Nicolau. I don't think I've ever picked against him. Like, I like this guy. He's a good athlete. He moves really well. He's got good movement. He sets up his opponents by drawing them into his power and responding. Quick hands. He's explosive, stays very tight. His left hand is his money shot. He also gets in the pocket, throws hard hooks. I'd say he's plus power. I actually give Snell the power advantage, even though Nicolau's more technical. He throws hard leg kicks, and he's a very underrated wrestler, very good grappler. He's got 5 submission wins. He's got hard ground and pound. He's really a really well-rounded flyweight. That's why I love it. I think this is an amazing matchup. I'm glad it's really high on the card. I like both guys. Despite dogging the odds, I was leading Nicolau. I think he's more technical. I think he can land the better shots. I think he can win some of the grappling exchange, especially if Snell like jumps on a guillotine or something like that. But I think we're gonna have a war. I think this might be fight of the night. I think it should be really close. I can't imagine betting on Nicolau, but give me Nicolau by decision.
Yeah, I'm kind of echoing everything you say here. I'm concerned. Like, I agree that the line is like bizarrely wide, but I think 2 parts of it are maybe some residual concern about, Snell making weight perhaps, and the fact that he has been hittable and, has been hurt in a lot of his fights, win or lose. Whereas Nicolau, win or lose, hasn't come up against much of that, aside from getting like pasted by Dustin Ortiz. But even if I thought Nicolau probably should have lost the decision against Manel Kape, like, he looked sensational in that fight. He's looked even better in his last 2 against Elliott and Dvorak. He just seems to be a guy that's cresting at the right time when this division is just about to be ready for some new title challengers. Like, he's kind of peaking at the right time here. These guys, fought 10 times. I don't think Nicolau like beats him like 8 or 9 times out of 10. I think this is going to be like a really fun matchup. But give me Nicolau by decision as well, and it'll probably turn on just a couple of big moments. Him hurting Snell on the feet, Snell making a mistake and ending up spending most of a round like defending himself, from submissions on the ground, something like that. Just a really close fight that hinges on just a couple of big moments for Nicolau or little lapses in defense for Snell. We come now to the co-main event of UFC on ESPN 42, a welterweight matchup between Brian Bam Bam Barberena and Rafael dos Anjos. Barberena, the 33-year-old Minnesota native by way of Arizona, is 18-8 overall. He's 9-7 in the UFC. He is on a 3-fight win streak over some pretty good fighters and some pretty great names. Beat Darian Weeks last December, took a split decision over Matt Brown at UFC on ESPN Blades versus Daukaus in March, and knocked out Robbie Lawler in the second round at UFC 276 in July. He will look to make it 4 in a row and put yet another marquee level name on his resume in the form of former lightweight champ Dos Anjos. The 38-year-old Brazilian is 31-14 overall. He is 19-12 in the UFC. Worth mentioning that 19-12 reflects a 15-8 mark at lightweight, 4-4 at welterweight. So he's been just a 500 fighter at welterweight, but basically got stuck into title contention level fighters right off the bat. Dos Anjos is coming off a loss in his last fight, got knocked out in the 5th round in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 39 by Rafael Fiziev. Prior to that, he had won 2 straight over Paul Felder and Renato Moicano, with about a year and a half layoff in between. Here he is, back at once and looking to get back in the win column, and he is the biggest favorite on the card to do so. Dos Anjos minus 540, Barberena around plus 420 as the substantial underdog. Keith, I feel as though I've made you go first over and over again tonight on this 15-fight card. And when I make you go first, well, by default, I usually have you go first unless I have a real clear picture of a fight. Just, it seems to work better. But definitely if I don't feel I have a super great handle on the dynamic of a fight. So I'll do you a solid here, and I'll go first on this one. Here we have Dos Anjos, who is one of the most crushingly heavy wrestlers and top position grapplers, ground and pounders, top position submission artists, really in UFC history. Just a dominating, just will-breaking grinder who really kind of came up against his ceiling at welterweight when he ran into guys that could do that better than him. But that was Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, just elite guys that, with the exception of Covington, were also huge guys. And he's going up against someone in Barberena who is a real fun kind of rock'em sock'em action fighter, but has some of the worst defensive wrestling in the division. And this is just an absolutely dreadful matchup for Barberena because Dos Anjos has lost a step. He's 39. He's been in a ton of wars. I think this is his 32nd UFC fight, but his chin is still decent. His cardio is still good. And Barberena is not a one-shot knockout artist. If Dos Anjos wants to come in for that takedown, there's nothing Barberena can give him that's going to stop him. He could land a perfect uppercut or a solid intercepting knee coming in, and Dos Anjos is going to end up on top of him anyway, just crushing the life out of him. And Dos Anjos tends to fight to his own best advantage. He doesn't hang out needlessly on the feet with fighters that he feels are too dangerous for him there. I expect he's going to get right down to business. Give me Dos Anjos by probably first round finish. It could be a TKO by ground and pound. It could be a submission. I'll flip a coin and say TKO, but it'll be one of those choose your poison moments where he's probably in mount and Barberena either stays where he is and gets TKO'd or turns his back and gets choked.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think this is the first time. It might be the first time or second time tonight that I've gone second. You said everything I had to say, man. Our RDA, he's 38, so that always is in the picture. He could not be RDA overnight, or the RDA we think of. That's a possibility. But if he's close to the RDA, now he's always going to be a little on the side at welterweight. That's going to happen. Barberena's a big, not a thicker guy, not huge, but he's a good size welterweight. If he's anywhere close to, say, the one who fought Moicano, or even the guy who got knocked out by Fiziev, he still looked as good as you can in a tough stylistic matchup. He's going to fuck up Brian Barberena. Brian Barberena had unbelievable output against Robbie Lawler. It was credible. His striking numbers were off the charts. That said, and I've said this before, and he I'm pretty sure he's in an epic decline, and I just think he has such a mental toughness and strength that he hides the physical decline that's there because he's slow, um, and he just has to win with pressure. Like he likes to work the body, he has some nice step knees, he's got some decent pop, but the speed is gone, um, and his ground game is really never been there. He's got a couple Darce choke wins and stuff like that on his record, but um, you mentioned his defensive wrestling before the Robbie Lawler fight, and it's actually what I said. Robbie Lawler should wrestle Barberino. He's going to win, and he doesn't because he's Robbie Lawler. But he got taken down 22 times in 4 fights. Like that's. I know I played a game last time Barberino fought, and I said, "Oh, the last 4 fights, how we got taken down?" And you're like, "Oh, I know it's going to be really high if you're asking me this question." And you're like, 10 or something, like 8. I'm like, no, I'll try 22. And out of all the guys Barberino has fought, who's a better grappler than RDA in his career?
In his entire career?
Maybe Leon Edwards, maybe Kobe
maybe.
Covington. Like those are wrestlers.
Maybe.
So yeah, okay. If you want to add wrestling, I was thinking more of like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappler. But okay, we'll add
Dos Anjos.
Yeah. We'll put the whole thing, the whole ground game.
Yeah.
Leon Edwards, Kobe Covington.
Yeah.
And they're like on par with RDA. They're not like way ahead of him.
Right.
RDA's gonna fuck him up. Like he's gonna do whatever he wants to. He's gonna take him down. He's gonna beat him up. I think he can still beat him up on the feet. I think he's faster, even though Barberino's 33 and RDA's 38. And again, they've both been in wars, and RDA has even more rounds based on fighting top competition in 5 rounds and main events and that. But this is a terrible stylistic matchup. I say RDA takes him down. I say he beats him on the ground. Barberino is so tough, so I think he'll make it too deep in the fight, but I think RDA finally ground and pounds him out. I'll say RDA by 3rd round stoppage.
With that, we come to the main event of UFC Orlando, a welterweight matchup between Stephen Thompson and Kevin Holland. Thompson, the 39-year-old South Carolina native. Hard to believe that. Just the eternally baby-faced, smiling, happy guy. There's something about him that just seems eternally 25, but he is, in fact, going to turn 40 in about 2 months. 16-6-1 overall. He is 10-6-1 in the UFC. That one, of course, was him coming within a whisker of winning the UFC welterweight title in his first matchup with Tyron Woodley. It ended up being a majority draw. They met again a few months later, dropped a majority decision to Woodley, and never quite got back to those heights again. And in fact, he is on a 2-fight losing streak now, those being unanimous decisions against Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad. The most recent of those, the Muhammad fight, was last December at UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Daukaus. Thompson will attempt to get back on track against Holland. The 30-year-old, I believe Californian fighting out of Texas, is 23-8 with 1 no contest overall. He is 10-5 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of the 2nd season of Dana White's Contender Series. Most of that 10-5, 1 no contest record has come at middleweight. He is just 2-0 at welterweight. He fought most recently at UFC 279 back on September 10th, where the card, of course, was shuffled at the 11th hour, and he ended up taking on Khamzat Chimaev in a 180-pound catchweight fight. Got choked out in just over 2 minutes, to nobody's surprise, including his own. He freely admitted it was a miserable style matchup, said he never wanted to fight a grappler again. And when you are Kevin Holland, the UFC gives you what you ask for, as he has drawn the welterweight in the UFC who is least likely to try to take him down and submit him in the longtime point karate champion. Odds here, pretty close, all things considered. Holland is minus 140, Thompson plus 120 as the slight underdog. Keith, you and I talked for a moment in between segments here. In fact, we talked for about 15 minutes about different things because we were somehow reluctant to get to this one. This fight doesn't mean as much in its divisional title picture as most Fight Night main events do. It isn't even the fight with the greatest title picture relevance on the card, most likely. And that is especially the case for Thompson. You pointed out, I mean, he's lost 4 of his last 6. He came so close to winning the UFC title about 6 years ago, but even if he beats Holland, even if he beats him bad, it would take something truly unprecedented to see him fighting for a UFC title again. Just with as crowded as the division is, as old as he is, it means a little more for Holland. But as long as Holland is a guy that won't settle on a weight class, he's never going to get a title fight in either division.
Yeah.
So this fight is worth exactly as much entertainment as it brings us.
Yeah.
Tell me if you think it's going to be entertaining, who you think wins, and how.
Yeah. So, all right. So I was thinking about a lot of things while you were just talking this, so I don't know where I want to go with this. So you talked about Stephen Thompson, and he's like, oh, he'll never, he's 40 years old. He's not going to ever win a title. You know what? And I agree, and I'd be extremely surprised if he does. And it's a shame that when he was so close on 2 different occasions, I think a lot of people gave him the second fight too against Tyron Woodley. The first one I think was clearly a draw, but like you got a 1 draw, 1 really close fight that you could have won. Man, you kind of feel bad for him, but you know what? He's kind of in the same position that Glover Teixeira was at. Glover Teixeira was 40 years old, and then we're like, oh, he's gonna blow up the spot for this guy. Then he wins. Then he wins the title. So, just throw that out there. Yeah. I'm trying to get people's excitement up. It's a weird matchup. Not stylistically. Stylistically, it's really fun. It's what Kevin Holland wants stylistically. Just the marketing of the UFC. Say what you want about Kevin Holland. He's so marketable. Like he came to I was at the UFC 281, and they had Holland come out and he did an interview there during the event, and he was like, he was super funny, and he was saying great stuff. And then he gets in a fight with Chimaev backstage at that event. Then he's fighting Kamaru Usman and Ali, and then he's fighting like just doing Kevin Holland things. And he's gonna talk shit, and he's gonna say something funny, and and then you put him against Stephen Thompson. Again, stylistically, the actual fight would be fun, but a guy who's just laying nuggets to set up like a rivalry and something. Then you put him against like Mr. Brady. Like that's what you do.
Yeah.
What? I don't know. I mean, you would be better off if you give him RDA. If you give Holland RDA, at least RDA will talk with you a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I know he wouldn't want to fight RDA stylistically, but I didn't.
No. I mean, I joked off the top that Thompson is the guy in the division least likely to try to take him down and submit him, but he'd be more likely to shoot a single on Holland and try to take his back than he would be to talk shit about his family, Yeah,
no shit. Yeah. Imagine a press conference, and I just thinking of 2 welterweights. Imagine a press conference. It's not one of these big fight fights. Just 2 guys. In the main events, Robbie Lawler and Stephen Thompson at a press conference.
Lawler says 10 words the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Stephen Thompson just responded to him yeah, oh, well said. That was well said, Robbie. God bless you. So I was doing tape study for this, and I was watching Kevin Holland, and I watched his last fight against Chimaev. I don't know why I have to say this, but Jesus Christ, Chimaev is good. Fucking amazingly good. I'll say this. If he fights Alex Pereira, that was the next fight, I'm taking Chimaev. I think Chimaev might finish him in the first round. Chimaev's unbelievable. But as far as this fight, Stephen Thompson, even though he never won the title, I think when we talk about strikers, I think he'll always be one of these names that gets brought up. When we talk about Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya and now Alex Pereira, guys who have these huge resumes who won the title, but Stephen Thompson would be that the way we talk about Crow Cop in Pride. I know he won the Grand Prix, but he never won the official heavyweight title and this and that, but we still bring him up as one of the greatest strikers. I think that's what we'll do with Stephen Thompson. That said, I'm worried about him at 39 years old. We haven't seen him put on a great striking display in 2 years. That's when he was 37. And I wonder if it's still there because, yeah, his last 2 fights, he's been on his back the whole time, going against 2 guys who are really smart who wrestled him, rightfully so. Thompson is really athletic. He's elusive. He's very fluid. But again, can he still do that at 39 years old? Now, the best of Stephen Thompson, we can see him. What I love about him is he can fight at both stances, and he's effective in both southpaw and orthodox. Great head movements. He does keep his hands low because that's that wide karate-based thing that he does. But he's got really good lateral movement. He cuts angles really well. He's good at causing his opponents to kind of chase him, and then suddenly he'll just like stop on a dime and just land a shot that really nobody else can while his opponent's still moving. He'll kind of stand on the outside, lull, and then he just blitzes in with like a 3-4 punch combination. He has that bladed karate stance, which like kind of angles off, makes it a little harder to hit him. He's got quick hands. His kicks are so good. He has a lot of variety in strikes. I mean, like, think about like Jorge Masvidal was known for striking, and he just jabbed him up. Vicente Luque just jabbed him up. He throws some hook kicks and side kicks and spinning wheel kicks and all kinds of stuff. And he mixes his kicks so well with his punches. Some concerns, and this is so random for a guy with his striking acumen, is he can have low output. Tyron Woodley in the second fight, he refused to throw back at him. And they both did, really. The Darren Till fight, a perfect example. If you don't come after him, he'll sit back. He'll just cruise. He'll let the time just kind of tick away, which obviously is an issue. And those 2 fights that he lost, really close fights. I mean, really boring fights, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He is open to leg kicks because of that base. And he's also never been a one-punch knockout guy. Like, of course, he has those knockouts, but like he's not just. I mean, most time we see that that kick that he hit wrapped around. Who was it that he throws?
Ellenberger.
Oh, was it Ellenberger? Yeah, you would see that kick
Yeah.
that he just wraps around, kind of hides it, and like he throws a combination, and then all of a sudden just right when the guy thinks that the combination's over, then all that kick just lands right after it.
Yep.
But you don't have like that one punch guy going to sleep kind of thing. He also lacks killer instinct, and I've said this past on him. And what I mean by this is it's the style of karate. Remember, he comes from a point kickboxing karate, not Muay Thai. And what I mean by that is he'll hit and then he'll reset, because that's what they do in karate. If you've seen the point, I had an old girlfriend in 10th grade. She did karate, and she was actually a black belt, and not Stephen Thompson level, but I watched some of the matches, and they throw a punch, but they land good. The referee like stops and says like point red, a point blue, or whatever. So that's what he does. He almost resets. It's like it's in his instinct, instead of like hitting him and then going in for the kill, or like if he has him hurt, finishing it up. And then chin. I'm worried about his chin. I mean, Darren Till dropped him. Tyron Woodley dropped him. Obviously, Anthony Pettis knocked him out.
Put him all the way out.
Yeah,
like smelling salts out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then he had like 200 kickboxing matches and karate matches and all this stuff. So, and before someone corrects me, I know Stephen Thompson has also done kickboxing. Yeah. So I'm just saying that karate, he does all those karate with those points. He still teaches it to kids and all that. And then, of course, his takedown defense, he's really struggled. To his credit against Tyron Woodley, and again, this is Tyron Woodley, who's at that time in his career, and really for the second half of his career, wanted to fight a slow output, so he wasn't shooting on him. But he was taken out 7 times in his last 2 fights against Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad, and he really struggled to get back up. So the reason why he wasn't taken down more is because he spent large portions of those fights pinned against the canvas. Now, Kevin Holland, on the other hand, I didn't expect to talk that long about Stephen Thompson. I apologize. Kevin Holland, really long and lengthy welterweight. He's a great athlete. He moves really well, very elusive, more athletic than he is technical. He throws a lot of strikes from his hips, but he has got quick hands. He's pretty accurate. He's got good power, especially at welterweight. He's a guy who actually sucked down a weight class, and it seems like he's got more power, more sting. He's long and lengthy, rangy kicks. He blasts his high kick really good. He's good at following his kicks into the pocket and then landing power shots. So he kind of throws the kick out to distract you or kind of cause you to get your hands up while he slides in. So you can't kind of like throw back at him as he slides in. And then when he covers that distance, which by the way, I've said this before about him, he covers that distance so quick because like one step and he's like right inside. Because he's so long. He's like I've said it before, he's like one step and it's like across half the cage. If he gets in the clinch, he uses his inside as well. He's one of the guys he actually focuses on like boxing the ears, which is like it hurts super bad if you get punched in the ear. He'll like palm strike the ears and stuff. Good knees inside the clinch because he's so long. He gets up there really easy. Despite him saying he doesn't want to fight against wrestlers, he'll get some takedowns himself. He isn't a wrestler. I'm not calling him that, but he's gotten takedowns in 5 UFC fights, which is good. He's been in a lot of UFC fights though. But he's still a very weak defensive wrestler. Even though he's gotten takedowns in 5 fights, he's been taken down in 12 UFC fights. And the worst thing is he struggles to get back up. Though to his credit, against Chimaev, he scrambled a lot better than I thought. And actually he got up at one time and Chimaev tried to take him down twice because Holland did a good job actually getting back up. And Holland was like throwing scramby rolls and all kinds of stuff. So I was like, oh shit, like where's this coming from? So that was fun. He has a submission threat. I mean, he caught Tim Means with that beautiful Darce choke, and that's not an easy thing to submit a guy like Tim Means. Though obviously in his last fight he was submitted by Chimaev. So as far as prediction goes, I never do this. Never ever do this. I'm not gonna go by the technical. I'm just gonna go with a gut call. And we talked about Stephen Thompson being 39 and does he still have it and this and that. I don't know. I just have this feeling that Thompson might be done. I have a feeling that he might not be a shot fighter. Like I'm not saying shot, and if he wins, I won't be surprised at all. I mean, look at the line; it's really close. But he feels like a guy that kind of has his foot halfway out the door. Like, is he training as hard as a guy who thinks he's going to win a title one day? I don't think so. I think he might be satisfied going through the motions kind of thing. Holland goes through the motions, and he's been accused of not even training. Like we've heard that. We've heard that wow, this guy's super talented. He wants to fight. His training is fighting. His training is I just fought 25 minutes in the cage. Of course I just trained, but I think Holland actually might hurt him on the feet. I think Holland might put Thompson away. So just a gut call, not technical. If Thompson just pieces him up on the feet, because that's what Thompson can do. Holland could go for a takedown. Like I actually asked him. He said he won't wrestle, but I want to put it past him if he does. But I know. I think Holland's gonna land something. I'm gonna say Holland puts him out. Give me Holland by 3rd round TKO.
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of what you're throwing out there, especially the idea that Thompson's got to be on his last legs at this point. His style, he's fluid and fast, but it's never run on being fast. That's not why he was hard to hit cleanly for all those years. It's not why he's still pretty hard to hit cleanly now. I mean, he can be, but no, it's just the technique and it being so unorthodox and difficult to train for. But nonetheless, it helps if you're still as fast and fluid, as you were at your best, which he is not. I do wonder about his commitment now. He might be that kind of shot that it's not like the first punch that hits him is just going to crumble him into dust, but he no longer has that extra gear that he used to be able to pull into. I mean, it's just 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, that he was still making top 10 welterweights and striking specialists at that look amateurish. Like both Luque and Neal didn't really look especially like they belonged in the cage with him. Like he made it look kind of easy to outstrike both of those guys. But that's a long time and a lot of punishment ago and a lot of just kind of discouraging grind time on his back. Holland is probably about as favorable a matchup for Thompson as they could find right now, considering, especially if Holland keeps to his word and doesn't try to take it to the ground. But I'm with you. He's he's even actually even taller and rangier than Thompson, which I mean practically didn't exist in the division when Thompson arrived. He's definitely faster at this point, fresher, gotta be hungrier. I'm thinking Holland kind of exposes the aging Thompson as well here. I don't know if he gets a finish, but the fact that it goes 5 rounds does make me kind of lean that way. That's a long time to be in the cage with someone who is as like sneaky good a striker and as sneaky good an opportunistic submission threat as Holland is. I'm going to say Holland is getting the better of things already when, let's say, in the 4th round, like definitely one of the main event rounds, Holland maybe stings Thompson, scramble ensues, all of a sudden he has his neck, and we're looking at another Darce choke. Give me Holland by 4th round submission here. And that is it for the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 42, Thompson versus Holland, also known as UFC Orlando. If this is your first time watching one of the Shillen and Duffy previews, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed the program. It's normally a little more lively than this, but we're recording it fairly late for us, and it's a 15-fight card. Please do like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We'd love to hear your takes on these fights. Love to go back and forth with you if you think we're crazy about any of these. Wouldn't be the first time. But most importantly, join us on the recap. We will be live on the Sherdog YouTube page about 15 minutes after the main event on Saturday, where we will break down this entire card in reverse order of how we just did. Keith will take the captain's chair. We will talk about the main event all the way down to that strawweight curtain jerker, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, and what was controversial. Guarantee you there will be something. And the live chat is wide open that whole time, so we are taking your questions, your comments, your idea for what should be next for some of these fighters in real time. We have a vibrant community there that kind of hangs out with us on fight night, and we'd love you to join us. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy the fights.